of Selectmen's meeting for Monday, March 28th, 2011. This is being videotaped. If everyone would please join me and start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all very much. And does anyone have any announcements? I have two. Go ahead.
Sure. One, Jay and I attended the gala on Saturday evening.
Superintendent,
and,
or, well, now
they
it's
don't call it that anymore.
Uxbridge
The
Education
Uxbridge Education Foundation.
Can you turn up the speaker so we can hear you, or?
Well,
I'm hearing you.
we'll speak louder.
Okay, there we
Is
go.
that better? Okay.
Oh, I won't touch that again. Jay and I attended the Uxbridge Education Foundation event that there was on Saturday evening, and it was a well-attended and really good time. The comic I thought was hysterical.
I had to leave early, so I didn't get to see that.
Yeah. So it was great entertainment. I think it was, I don't know how they did financially, but
It's a nice prizes, though.
yes, it was some nice prizes, so.
Anyone else?
Last week, as you know, Senator Moore was in the town hall talking to people and giving people a chance to ask him questions and so forth. And my understanding was that there was discussion, among other things, along 2 points. One was the notion of perhaps relieving seniors of some of the tax burden attributable to schools. And I guess there are 2 proposals to do that are being perhaps going to be submitted by the senator. It sounds nice, but the problem is that if you lower the tax of a certain group of people without lowering the cost of government, all you do is shift the tax from seniors such as myself to the children and grandchildren of seniors such as myself. So that really doesn't solve anything. But it's even worse than that, because what happens is, anytime you have a program like that, you have to have people on the public payroll to administer it. So our children and grandchildren would have to pay not only a portion of our tax, but a portion of our tax plus an additional amount to cover the cost of the bureaucrats around the state who are going to administer these things. That is no solution at all. The other item of discussion, I'm told, revolves around the Mandated Wage Act. And it is the senator's position, apparently, that being forced to pay triple wages to people working on public projects really doesn't increase the cost. Now, I'm not the brightest guy around, as you know, but I really have a hard time figuring that out. If you pay, labor generally is about a half of the cost of a construction project. So if you triple the cost of half of something, how can it not affect the total cost? Of course it does. His idea is that while you can still, the contractors can still negotiate and try to get a good deal on the materials, which is true, I suppose, except that all materials are made by workers. So apparently there are 2 classes of workers. Workers who can get whatever wage they mutually agree between themselves and the employer, and that's fair, that's how the system is supposed to work. And privileged workers, workers that actually assemble things on a public site. And the only justification I can see for that mandated wage law is nothing more or less than a legalized fleecing of the taxpayers of the Commonwealth. I don't think anyone can make the case that that's going to give us a better quality of construction, because we know that it doesn't. In fact, universally, public construction is always, almost always, very poorly done. If you keep up with the news, You know that many of the 150-pound lights in the Big Dig Tunnel are now falling upon cars. And all those lights were affixed by triple-wage employees under the laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It's a sad day, that's all.
Did you have an opportunity to meet with him, Peter, as well, or
No.
not?
No, I'm hoping that we can get him to come here, and maybe we can have a good discussion on these things.
I was in attendance at that meeting.
Were you?
Yes.
Was it anything other that you wanted to add to it that Peter had mentioned or not? For anyone who wasn't able to attend it?
Actually, the one thing that we're in the process of, correct, Tracy, Dave Genero has contacted Senator Moore's office for a written correspondence back, but the town meeting warrant article, the one, the MGL relating to the senior circuit breaker and the property tax, there was some discussion on that, and that would, unofficially right now, it looks like the State House would be recommending not going forward with that, because if the senior takes the property tax, they can't have the circuit breaker the following year. You can't have both taxes. It's a one or the other situation.
Okay.
So it's,
And as of late today, there is additional information in the read file in your mailbox.
oh, in the mailbox, okay, because I didn't see anything
Yep.
here, so, okay, so, but that, so that'll come up later, but that was something else that was in discussion at that meeting.
And is the director of the senior center, is Marcia aware of this as well? Do you know, was any of that shared with her?
She was not at the meeting. There were several department heads there, but she was not one of the ones in attendance.
Okay.
Everyone, all the department heads were invited, but I don't know, not all of them were able to attend.
Okay. All right. You can just-
The senator will be available. What was the date of his local aid presentation? The 6th, was it?
Sometime late, within
I'll
the
get
next
the
week
date
and a
to you
half.
next
Yeah.
week. The senator is holding a local aid forum at the Singh Center in Northborough. Because all of his, people from all of his district are invited, local officials, it's not open to the public for reasons of space, but certainly local officials are all invited.
When you have a meeting such as that, where the number of, quote, local officials is going to amount to 100 or so, it's not going to be a productive meeting. You're going to get a speech from the senator, and that's all. Those meetings are simply not productive. They're public relations efforts, and I understand why they do those things. But as far as being something that's really going to be productive, forget it.
Well,
Not worth
I've been to those the last 2 years, and there is, they are productive in the sense that the senator will convey information on where the Senate is as far as local aid, and where he reads the tea leaves to us, essentially.
Well, you know, that reading tea leaves is a fine exercise, I suppose, but I like my tea hot, and I like to drink it, and I'll look at the tea leaves after I finish the tea. I'll read them myself.
2 announcements I'd like to share. The town of Uxbridge is auctioning approximately 10 to 12 cords of firewood. The bids are due at the office of the town manager by 3 p.m. on Wednesday, April 6th, 2011. And the second announcement is that the Blackstone Valley Chamber of Commerce will be hosting a bike path update on Thursday, March 31st, 2011 at 7 a.m. 7 a.m. At Alternatives in Whitensville. Just want to double check that. Do you have an announcement?
Just a quick one to remind folks about the town elections coming up, and that Tracy's gonna double check the date, but we believe it's April 15th is when papers need to be filed by if you plan on running for the open seats on multiple boards.
Boards and committees, yep. Excellent, thank you. All right, anyone here for Citizens Forum? All right, well, let's start with first row.
Good evening, Melissa Philbrook for Deerview Lane. I'm here to speak on behalf of Wildlife Drive in Deerview Lane. Again, sorry to take up your time. We're here because when we attended the Board of Selectmen meeting this winter to review the winter maintenance plan, we were told that we would be put on the spring meeting, the docket for the spring meeting. Whether that was a misunderstanding and something needed to be put in writing, I'm not really sure what happened there. But our Attorney Lane did send a letter to you, which I do have a copy of, asking if it would be feasible to hold a special town meeting 5 minutes before the spring meeting to vote to put Deerview and Wildlife Drive on the docket to be voted for road acceptance, or if we needed to collect the 200 signatures to hold a special town meeting.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes. I assume that the majority of people, and correct me if I'm wrong, are here from Deerview and Wildlife as well? Okay, all right. It's something that we're going to need to discuss because you've brought it up in Citizens Forum. We don't have it on the agenda, but it is something that we'll have to put on the agenda for our next meeting, which will be April 11th,
Yes.
I believe is our next meeting.
I think the question that everyone wants to know
If we can put it
is,
on there.
do we have time to do it? Because certainly, it doesn't make any sense to put them through the process of getting signatures for a special town meeting and the expense to the town.
Agreed.
So if we can schedule it, then we should. The question is, do we have enough time?
Yes, a special town meeting needs to be, well, I'll have to look at the posting requirements, the amount of time it needs to be open, but a special town meeting needs to be posted for 2 weeks before it's held, so 2 weeks before, if we hold it the same night, hold a special within the annual, that would be adequate, and I think it has to remain open for a week per the charter, so 3 weeks is enough time.
Okay, well, I would be in favor of saying that, yes, we will do that, and we'll get the announcement as soon as we can. I mean, why wait?
Because we can't make a motion on it right now, that's why it's not.
Well, I'm not making a motion.
Okay.
I'm just giving people an indication of what my feeling is. And nothing in the charter prohibits us from discussing anything.
I agree.
The charter just says we can't vote, we can vote on something if it's not on the agenda, but it's not effective, it's not on the agenda.
Right.
But certainly we can discuss it, and I'd like the people to leave here with
Feeling
an
comfortable.
indication of whether, you know, they should start going out and getting 200 signatures.
Right, right.
They don't
I
need
agree.
200 signatures. You can open,
No,
You
no,
could
if
open a
they're,
special.
no, if they're
If-
gonna force a special.
If we wouldn't entertain
don't
the
Call
idea,
a
which
special town meeting.
doesn't make sense to me, but, I
Well,
mean, we should.
My question, and I understand, you know, I read the letter from your attorney with regards to the confusion. Two questions. The issue is because the winter maintenance ultimately is what's coming up. I guess my question is what would be the urgency in holding the special for this one road when we have the fall town meeting, would be the first question. And then secondly, there's still, even to run the special in front of the annual, there's no additional cost for the actual town meeting. However, we still have a posting requirement. We're still gonna have to pay the newspapers to run that. My only concern would be, and I don't know where we are, and I think it's something that we should keep in mind, is there going to be another special town meeting coming up with regard to the school? And does it make sense to run the posting for a special before the annual, and then possibly if there is a potential for having another special town meeting?
Why is there,
before the fall?
what's the potential for one for the school, for a special town meeting for the school?
Well, I've heard through rumor, separate from anything else, a Prop 2.5 potential override to pay for the cost of the school because it's over budget now.
Well, I take that as rumor where this is a
Well, but
a
it's
legitimate
something,
request.
I understand that. It may be, but I think it's also something for us to, you know, hopefully we'll know in the next couple of weeks. Well, we'll know on Wednesday when we have our meeting, whether or not potentially we will be looking at something like
Let's
that.
not worry about that today.
I do have a statement regarding the reason we choose not to wait till the fall town meeting,
Okay.
and it doesn't have anything to do with road conditions or being, you know, reevaluated, but we do have a neighbor who's trying to sell her house in town. It doesn't look favorably for her to sell her house when it's a private road. So if it's a public way, then, you know, it's much easier to sell her house. So,
Well, on top of that, you'd like to get it behind you.
exactly, we've been to many
And
of
I'd like
these
to get it
meetings at this
behind us,
point.
too.
Yeah, I see no problem with it either.
Okay, so shall we attend again the April 11th meeting?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Will we have to notify you to get us on the agenda for next meeting?
I'm taking this as notification, because there are more than enough of you here, and it's a concern as well. We want to get it addressed. If there's anything additional that we need, I'm sure Tracy has contact information for the appropriate people.
Let me just verify the timelines in case it needs to be accelerated to next
Okay.
week.
Okay, excellent. You're welcome. People got it? Yeah.
That's the clarification of the announcement
Oh,
on
right.
the dates.
And just to go back to the announcements, clarification on when the nomination papers, they are due to the town clerk on Tuesday, April 5th by 5 PM for the annual town election. And just an FYI, the voter registration deadline for the spring annual town meeting is Wednesday, April 20th by 8 PM. All mail-in voter registration forms must be postmarked by April 20th, 2011 for the annual springtime meeting. Okay. I'm sorry, there are two people in the, okay, ladies first.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
My name is Wendy White. I live at 91 Old Richardson Street, and I just wanted to speak very briefly about the town manager position. I had an incident with the town manager. I had never had the pleasure of meeting him in person. Shortly after he came on board, I made a phone call to him with some concerns I had about some issues that had involved me and legal issues. And he was very short with me. He was not helpful. He did not let me tell my story. He did not let me finish. So I said, well, what am I supposed to do, hire an attorney? And he said, yeah, hire an attorney, because I'm not going to do anything for you. And he hung up on me. So my issue is I've been a resident for 24 years. I own 3 pieces of property. I pay over $22,000 a year in real estate taxes to this town. And I don't know why we need a town manager, because this town was running very well before we ever had a town manager. And maybe that would help cut some of the cost of our continuous rise in real estate taxes. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Okay.
Yes, good evening. Michael Baril, 143 West Street. I'm here for 2 things. The first thing is some advice I'd like to give the Board of Selectmen regarding budgetary matters. I did a public records request for some financial records from the Finance Department here, and one of the things that I was concerned about after seeing the cuts made for the senior center, the town has a general liability insurance policy that taxpayers pay between $175,000 and $200,000 a year just for the premium alone. The total coverage for this town is $180 million worth of coverage. And after watching the Selectmen's meeting and Finance Committee meetings and seeing everything, I think that attacking the senior center budget, I'm in defense of the seniors. They have a small budget, and I think that there are other ways to look at through talking through David Genero from the Finance Department where money could be cut off the top, like these big premiums. If, I see Mr. Genero is not here tonight, but if he says, well, the town doesn't really need $180 million worth of coverage, you could easily go down from $175,000 to maybe $100,000. And you would save $75,000 just as this example of having free money to spend somewhere else. So that's all I wanted to say on that. The second thing is the town manager. I have been here on 3 separate occasions seeing the town manager. Some of you are already aware of the situation because I had told you the problem years ago. Basically, I came to him the first time when he came here. He did meet with me, and we did go over some stuff. I felt that there was some inappropriate action towards me, and he basically refused to help me and refused to do anything. So another incident that I had, which would be my second time seeing the town manager, was actually on the day of the elections of Mr. Bruce Desilets and Jay Cahill. I had come in here to speak to the town manager, and when I walked over to this door here, Assistant Town Manager Scott J. Freitas and the town manager were in this office over here, and I said I wanted to speak to him privately. He refused to talk to me privately and says, if you want to talk to me, you're going to talk to me in front of Scott Freitas. So I had a conversation, and basically the conversation went downhill. He was disrespectful to me. He refused to do anything for me, and we ended up exchanging a few words, and I basically said, you're the town manager, we pay you $90,000 a year, you're supposed to help the residents, and his comment was, I don't have to do anything for you, because I know all your history, Freitas has told me everything, and he says, I ain't doing a damn thing for you. And I told him I was upset that he said that. I said it was disrespectful, and he basically said, I don't care, right to my face. The third time I was here was just less than 2 months ago. I came in to see him, and Assistant Town Manager Scott Freitas was in there, Tracy was in there, and so was the town manager. And I sat right there in that third seat after I said I wanted to speak to him privately. Again, he refused to speak to me privately, and I was the one that gestured, okay, then I'll sit down, and I sat down right there in that chair, and he stood right here. And I told him, I says, hey, this is your last time I'm coming to you to help solve my problem. You didn't do anything the first 2 times. You disrespected me, and I basically giving you the last chance to do something. And he basically didn't do a thing for me. We exchanged some more words, and he basically told me that the rumor in town is that I'm I won't say the swear, but I'll say that it's 3 letters put together. And I says, oh, and he says, oh, you think you're some little tough guy here, don't you? And he says, well, nobody likes you, and you're not going to get your way, and I'm never helping you. And I says, you know what? I says, our taxes pay your salary, and I was disrespected by him, and I found that that was totally inappropriate as a town manager. Even when Joe Myers was here, I never treated that disrespectful and very rude. So at this point in time, I'd like to inform the board I've putting together a formal written complaint. I'm asking for the town manager to be terminated. I would appreciate, Madam Chairperson, if you could get me a copy of the town manager's contract, if that's a public record. And I'm looking to pursue that I want to file a formal complaint for 3 separate occasions of being disrespected. And I found it totally, I don't know what the right word is, but I'm basically, after watching the February 14th meeting, and part of me was discussed here in front of you, even though my name was not mentioned, and watching the Selectmen's meeting after that, and watching the DVD and the town manager sit and make faces about, oh, I didn't do anything wrong. I find that totally disrespectful another way. So that's where I'm at, and I'm not very happy. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here for Citizens Forum?
Good evening. My name's Christopher Griffiths. I live on Sylvan Rd. I'm here with my neighbors on Sylvan Rd. We have an issue regarding law and health. There's a residence, Mr. Wassenaar's residence, is a problem regarding health. There was a letter and put together. It says that it was delivered, and I, and along with a lot of my other neighbors, have delivered letters to the Board of Health, complaints stating there's issues. There's many cars in the yard, more than I think that are legally allowed if they're unregistered. There are pieces of equipment in the yard that are leaking fluids if not maintained, which they're not being maintained if they've sat for the 8 years I've lived on the street. And also, there's computer equipment. I don't think that's supposed to be a lawn ornament. If anything, they contain toxic materials. You're not allowed to just throw monitors and trash cans and dispose of them. And those are all seeping into the groundwater we drink. That town doesn't have town water running up that street for us. We have well water. That's a concern to me, my family, and my children, is we don't drink the water that comes out of our well. We shower with it. I spend a small fortune in bottled water because of my concern of what's in it. Never mind the fact it is a breeding ground for rats. You just look at the yard, and there's vehicles everywhere. I didn't know we had an auto salvage yard on Sylvan Road. Is that not against the law to have more than 3 vehicles or 2 vehicles unregistered? But yet, every week, another vehicle gets brought in, more and more. It's not about vanity. It's about what's right and what's wrong. And I wouldn't be allowed to dump motor oil in my backyard because I didn't want to dispose of it properly. So what's the difference of leaving 42 cars unattended for 20 years to leak these fluids? Is anything being done about this? I went to the Board of Health, I was shown a file that had to have been 6, 7 inches thick, and was told, feel free to go through it. Feel free, we've been fighting it, we've been fighting it, we've been trying. What's being done? The whole town, you know, the streets here to talk to the town about what's going on. Why is it there's more vehicles being brought in? Nothing's being done to stop this? I mean,
This is the first time it's being brought to my attention, so I appreciate that.
okay,
Your letter was to the Board of Health?
yeah.
I don't, if you could give that to Tracy.
There's a petition there also, signed.
Is that your original?
Is that the original, Betty?
Is it a copy we can keep?
Oh, you
Oh, okay.
You can keep the copy, she has other copies.
Okay, all right.
Tracy can copy, I didn't shut it off today.
No, this is a concern that if left unattended, what, we wait till there's 100 cars?
Right.
Or maybe wait until someone is drinking hydraulic fluid and loses their hair and we wonder why?
Okay. No, I understand.
Or wait until my 2-year-old gets bit by a rat that's bigger than my Labrador? You know? It's a concern, and I'd wish that the town would do something. It's not anything personal against the person, it's not vanity. It's about principle. If there's a law being broken, why isn't it being taken care of?
Right.
You know, I feel
Understandable.
when I'm shown an envelope, a folder, this thick, and told, make copies, go through it, we've been fighting it, we've been trying. Obviously, not hard enough. Does it have to go to a state, a federal level? Because I'm pretty sure Clean Harbors doesn't appreciate factories and corporations dumping these fluids into the ground.
Right.
And what gives a resident the right to do it?
No, that's understandable. Seems like there's a lot going on with this, and as I said, since this is the first time it's been brought to my attention, we need a little time to dig into it. Now, we have the copy of the letter, and are you
I would suggest
Are you the
checking.
spokesperson for
Yes.
the, okay, and is your contact information on there as well?
I could put it on there.
If you could give that, do that for us
I
as
suggest
well.
looking up the Board of Health or across the way and checking on their folder, because I can guarantee that everybody here has filed a report or a complaint about health.
Okay,
I was sent to the zoning board across. They said, go talk to the zoning committee about the vehicle count. I sent an email, nothing. If anything, there were 2 more cars brought in.
okay.
That's a concern, you know?
Let us start to dig into it, and as soon as we can have gather enough information, I don't want to promise you that you'll be on the agenda for the 11th, in case we don't have all the information we need.
We don't have jurisdiction over the Board of Health as the Board of Selectmen, so
Right,
it
but we
may
can
be
talk to
very
the.
limited that we.
Exactly,
Right,
right.
so I just
If
don't wanna
there's-
leave
if there's
with,
things we
we
can
don't
do,
ha- right.
right.
What
We
about
may
the
not
any-
have jurisdiction,
Okay.
so I just don't wanna leave you with the wrong impression that there's something that we can actually do. You know, we'll have to first contact the Board of Health and see where
Yeah.
they are at in this process.
If there are specific zoning violations, we can address those, for
Right.
example, the cars.
Cars we can take
But-
care
I
of.
mean, there is a
The
picture in the
leaking
Board of
fluid
Health
may
showing
be something we have to
42
refer to the
cars, an
state.
aerial shot from Google Earth. It's right there. I was amazed to see that it's sitting there in the town's folder, but nothing's being done. I'm in construction, I see equipment all the time, and it's constantly being maintained.
Yeah.
If left unmaintained, those hoses leak, and hydraulic fluid doesn't evaporate. It goes down into the drinking water. We have wells. That's scary.
I agree,
That's a very scary situation.
Okay.
Have you brought it to the Zoning Board of Appeals?
No.
Any issues? Okay,
It would be the zoning enforcement officer, building commissioner.
okay.
I was also told by the Board of Health that there have been people that have attempted to go there and take care of this and were told to leave. if it's a case of they were told to leave, is that where the zoning committee would come in, or the police? Because if someone that has authority to take a look at this and is just go away, and that's it, you know, this is serious.
Right, and it'll depend on who was turned away. Was it the building inspector that was turned away? You know, was it a member of the Board of Health that was turned away? So, okay.
Board of Health.
Thank you.
I mean, these people.
He's not the owner of the land either, he is not on that property. He's a squatter.
Could you, I'm sorry, if you're going to speak just so people can hear you at home as well.
Carl Larsson, I've lived at 57 Sylvan Road, next door, my whole life. I grew up in that house. That's my cousin, by the way. Byron Wassenar is my cousin, sad to say. Nice enough guy, but kind of eccentric in a way. It's been a problem for as long as I can remember. My cousins always brought vehicles into the yard, and over the years it got totally out of hand. And I mean, Pete just keeps bringing in more and more and more stuff. I mean, whether it's cars, trucks, boats, backhoes, trailers, computer equipment, you name it. I mean, he just drags everything into their yard. And it's getting more and more out of hand. And as he said, the mice, the rats, as soon as I think I'm rid of mice in my house, they're back. They're back, just all over. And again, I have no doubt that over all these years, there's oil, there's gas, there's hydraulic fluid. From the electronic equipment, the computers, who knows whether there's lead or what else, cadmium, whatever metals are also into the soil. The Board of Health has been there. I talked to the Board of Health finally in frustration. Board of Health said that they were turned away. That's not his property to turn anybody away. That was my aunt and uncle's property. The will has not been read. And he's just living there, and I don't think legally there's anyone supposed to be living there because the septic system is not up to code. That's another issue.
That's a whole other issue. Yeah. Okay.
So.
All right. Thank you for the information.
Title V is actually triggered
Peter, you
towards
got any
the
comment
transfer.
on that?
Right. It'll be resolved.
You have any comment on that?
Well, there are a couple of things that come to mind.
Transfer.
Generally, when enforcement action is taken, it's taken against the owner of the property. So if the owner of the property doesn't want the person living there, then the owner has the ability to remove the person. Apart from that, and this is something we run into all the time. For instance, you'll have a building that's in danger of falling down. Under state law, the town, if we find such a building that endangers the public health, the town can go in and pull the building down for the purposes of protecting the public safety. But the town has to pay to do that, you see? And then we put a lien against the property. But that doesn't pay for taking the building down. It's an expense to the town. And when these things get into the court system, you find that there's, it's put off and put off and put off. We have similar situations with the DEP. Now, first, I should tell the gentleman that a septic system doesn't have to meet current code. There are many systems that don't meet current code. Codes change all the time. It doesn't mean you have to change the system every time the code changes. When the electrical code changes, you don't have to go and rewire your whole house to meet current code. But where there are violations, clear violations, and we try to get assistance from the DEP, they're great, they're fantastic as to what they promise, but they never follow through on the promise. It all comes back to the local town to take any action that needs to be taken. And what it means is that we have to go to court, get an order, and then we have to pay to remediate a situation, and the expense is on the town. one of the things you also run into is a complaint is against a certain property, then you look at properties across the street, and they have maybe not quite as bad, but similar situations. So then you get into a he said, she said, back and forth and so forth. It's not an easy thing to resolve. The other thing is that a vehicle left by itself, or a television left by itself, does not breed rats. Rats want to eat. They want things they can eat, and they don't eat televisions, they don't eat automobiles. Mice you have all the time, and you can't get rid of the mice. No one can get rid of mice permanently. But rats are a different thing, and rats don't eat iron, they don't eat steel, they don't eat rubber, they don't eat television sets. So,
I have a question. If this was a corporation, would you guys have acted the same way? If this was a factory doing the same thing, dumping their chemicals into the ground? Are we not?
well, see, if
I
it's a
think-
situation of
excuse
dumping
me.
chemicals in the ground, that's something different. But the mere fact that there are automobiles or televisions doesn't mean necessarily. We have gone through this before in situations. We've sent people out there specifically to look for signs of oil leaking out of automobiles and so forth, and nothing was found.
We're
as
zoned
far as being
residential.
leaking.
Excuse me, as this is the Board of Selectmen meeting, I don't mean to interrupt
Yep,
you and don't want to
sure.
be rude. We have the luxury of having Selectman Baghdasarian, who is also a member of the Board of Health here, and I appreciate that he is able to answer some of your questions. But there is more digging, no pun intended, that
Okay.
we need to do in order to really figure out what is going to help you from what the board can do from our perspective. I know, Peter, if, when your next meeting is.
You're welcome to come to our next meeting.
My
and-
concern is just seeing the dates on those files in the Board of Health. It
Yeah.
goes back a distance.
Yeah.
I mean, this is something, I've lived on the street for 8 years, but in the town my whole life, and it hasn't changed in 8 years.
Right.
So I understand that there's a process, and I'll allow, I understand that. Just,
appreciate that.
it's a concern for the whole street to come in unity to do.
Most definitely, yeah.
It's not easy, because he is a neighbor.
Right.
But it's a concern.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here for Citizens Forum? No? All right. I do believe there are some people in the audience here to talk about new business. Letter D, Davis Heights subdivision. If the board agrees, we can move onto that one once the room clears. We lose everyone. Lose our audience. That's fine. That is a lot of people.
Peter, when's the next Board of Health meeting?
If you had asked me this afternoon, I would have told you.
Can't tell me now, right?
Check with Denise.
I'll be down in a few days, you can tell me.
Okay.
Is he gonna come back in a minute or two?
What's Ben
Um,
here for?
Water
And
restrictions.
it's water restrictions.
Oh, here he
Here
comes
he
now.
comes, okay. All right. We're here to discuss eminent domain, Davis Heights subdivision, 55 Glen Street.
Thank you, Henry Lane, on behalf of the Davis Heights residents. As you know, the petition for acceptance of Glen Street and Lee Street are on the warrant for the annual town meeting. And this is one of a whole series of streets, of course, that the town's been dealing with. We anticipate that by the time of the town meeting, we'll be prepared and have all the documents we need to convey the appropriate rights to the town. But there's a chance, because of some things we can't control, that we may not be 100% ready. And I guess we just want to, in view of the position the town's taken with regard to some of the other subdivisions, and apparently conceding that they may have to use eminent domain authority to acquire the necessary rights, we just want to take the opportunity to discuss the possibility of using that in this subdivision as well if it becomes necessary after the town meeting. Our thought was the standard article we have includes the authority to exercise the right of eminent domain if it's necessary. And we just sort of want to, as I say, advise the board that if it turns out we are unable to get 100% of what we need, rather than spending an inordinate amount of time and money to try to pursue that option, we want to have the option to ask the town to exercise its right of eminent domain to complete the process. So I guess I'm saying we think we can get everything, but there is one little hitch that we may come up with that is insurmountable, and in that event, we will be looking to the town to do something. I know up to now the town had not been, you know, willing to do that, but in view of the situation with regard to the other subdivision that's on the warrant, I guess that position has changed. So I think it's, you know, potentially a little unfair to say you'll do it for one subdivision and not for another. So we just want to leave that option open with regard to Glen Street and Lee Street as well.
Governments aren't necessarily fair, as you know.
We do our best to try to bring fairness to government. It's a struggle every day, but we nevertheless persevere.
Mr. Lane, are you aware that with the other streets, it's not an issue of the town just, you know, exercising eminent domain, that they are actually paying all legal costs, and we haven't even voted on whether or not we are even taking those streets by eminent domain yet. It's still a matter pending before the board. But they are paying all legal costs that's the proposed, that they will be paying all legal costs that are associated with this in the eminent domain process.
That's fine. We expect.
But so it's not just a matter of, you know, what we see here is your request, but the additional paperwork that the board would need to entertain this is not before us. I guess my question is that you indicated that you, through the normal process, you hope to have this ready for town meeting. So is it a matter that if you don't make it by town meeting, then you would be then asking for that request after town meeting going into the fall?
No, what we anticipate that there may be one situation that we cannot obtain for factors that are beyond our control, simply because it's not possible. And I don't want to get into all the details of that, but it just may be that we anticipate we should get everything, but if we don't get it, it will be because there's an insurmountable problem that we can't overcome voluntarily.
And who then, is that property owner around?
Yeah, I don't want to get into the details.
Okay.
Just
Is that property
saying that if
owner willing to?
it's just beyond anybody's control. It has to do with financial institutions that we can't control, basically.
Right, but is the property owner willing to, you know?
Well, the property owner is very accommodating. They'll cooperate in any way possible. It's a financial institution. That's the issue. We've already got the property owner signed off. That's not the issue. It's a financial institution.
So is the fundamental issue a time issue or a possibility issue?
If it was only a time issue, we'll resolve it. But we're anticipating, and again, we're optimistic, but it's just the one that we can't control. We're both basically at their mercy, and we can't control it. So, and we don't want that one issue to hold up the whole street, or both streets, frankly. And again, we hope we can overcome it, and we'll be in good shape. But you know, if we get, we went through this last time. If we get to the 120 days after the town meeting, and it appears that we're not going to be successful, you know, we will be back saying, look, we need your accommodation in this regard. And I guess, you know, you have the option of saying no.
Just my opinion on this one is the eminent domain one that we were looking at for the other property had to do with the bankruptcy of a corporation who owned a common parcel. It wasn't an individual property owner. And if time can fix it, and usually with these, in my experience so far, it's been an urgency on getting snow winter maintenance issues taken care of. If we can't get it done because of April, and time's still an option to move this forward into the fall, my preference would be to see how we can address it in that manner as opposed to eminent domain. But if you're saying there's an impasse, that time can never heal this, then I think it's a different issue, and we'd need to explore more details about what that is. We don't have to do it tonight, but.
And that's fine. We just want to advise you before the town meeting that we're going into this knowing, with our eyes open, knowing that we haven't got 100% of it in hand. And, you know, if it becomes insurmountable and impossible, you know, we're going to be looking for some relief. Much like the situation with the other subdivision where apparently, and I haven't looked at that in great detail, but apparently there's something that's beyond the control of the residents. They can't produce the documents because it's just impossibility, and they're looking for your help. We may be in the same position, and if we are,
The door's been open, so.
exactly. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
The one thing, though, that I like the board to think about going into the Springtown meeting with these street acceptances is that in the past, there was a time frame that we were going forward with on the layout of the streets and the process that had been set in place. And at the Fall Town meeting, we threw that out the window. We threw the baby out with the bathwater at the Fall Town meeting. We did not follow any of our policies and procedures. My question to the board would be, are we intending to repeat the Fall Town meeting again, or are we gonna hold to our guidelines in the original policies of our street acceptances? Or if the paperwork is not to us, you know, the 7 or 14 days prior to town meeting, we do not lay out the streets. And it's something that, you know, for us to keep in mind, because I think it's only fair to the residents to know sooner than later, you gotta make that deadline, or not. Instead of assuming that we set a precedent in the fall and on town meeting floor, we're gonna be laying out streets. I think we need to decide, are we following our policy or not? That's all I wanted to say on that.
Following policies and procedures is a good idea, and it makes sense, if the procedures themselves and the policies make sense. Now, if there's something magic about the number of days before the town meeting that's important, then that's an issue. If it's arbitrary, then, you know, an arbitrary policy or an arbitrary procedure that doesn't serve any real purpose needs to be looked at and say, you know, why do we have
Is
this?
it effective or not?
Right, and if that's the case, I agree with you, then,
Yeah, I don't
you
know
know,
if it is or isn't.
well, then maybe that's an issue where we look at and say, okay, this is, the policy needs to change, and we're gonna put this policy into effect on X. But you know, we've had a procedure where the residents are trying to look for guidance to make sure that they are, you know, jumping through every hoop that we put, and I think that it's unfair when we start moving the hoops around. Then it's kind of like, well, which deadline am I trying to make, and which rule am I trying to follow? I mean, Attorney Lane raises a good point. It's like before, eminent domain was never on the table. Well, now it is on the table with one subdivision. Well, is it only on the table for that one subdivision, or is it on the table for all subdivisions? You know, I think it's a fair question.
The door was opened.
And was it only open for
One.
everyone now, or was it open for a specific circumstance, which is what, you know, I think that Jay is,
I know it's-
I
spoke
think
to.
every situation's unique, and, you know,
Right.
And every situation, you analyze that particular situation in the light of the facts and circumstances, and make a decision based on that, not on some arbitrary, bureaucratically imposed set of conditions.
Jason Gesham from 45 Glen Street, just to pick up on the conversation that's happening right now. We've worked pretty hard and fast to get to where we are through some very big hurdles, very big. And we've spent a tremendous amount of money to this point. And I'd just like to pick up on your conversation. How can you possibly look to one subdivision who has done ultimately very little in comparison, and then look at a subdivision like Davis Heights, who has done a huge amount of work and spent a huge amount of money, and say, it's okay for them, but thanks for spending all your money and doing it the right way, but it's not gonna work out for you. I mean, we've spent, by the time this is all said and done, we will be upwards of $15,000+ to get this process done out of our pockets, because the developers bailed out and everybody else bailed out. It came down to us. I know the other subdivision has done nothing like that. So how is it okay for us to spend that kind of money?
sure, let me answer it, because I think, and the work's appreciated by what you've done, and you, I've been a big proponent of getting the streets accepted. The circumstances with that other street was it was completely different, and what we had to do was look at the situation and say, all right, how can we effectively get the residents of that street into a accepted street without exposing the town to any additional or as minimal amount of risk as possible. we don't know all the details of this one yet, so I can't sit here and emphatically say that the risk level is gonna be the same with yours, and if it is the same or less, then you likely have my support to do the eminent domain. But at this point, I don't know, and I don't think we can immediately say, just because we did one on one street, we have to do it, or we're gonna do it on everyone. At the end of the day, I think the fundamental difference in this versus the other one is we're talking about a residence, which is a single property, which is gonna have a different set of ownership behind it, as opposed to a bankrupt company that just owned a piece of road and not a property, not a building or anything like that.
You know, the only thing I would say too, in regards to where we're at is it, you know, it would be this one particular property with the other 11 deeds fully executed and released from the banks. So it's not like we're asking to take all of it and.
No, understood, and I don't mean to be discouraging on it, but I think we just need to, we need to get into it, and we certainly, I know you guys have been great and fantastic, and you've been excellent with keeping us updated, so, you know, personally, we wanna do whatever we can to help you out, but we just can't emphatically say, yes, we'll take it by eminent domain.
No, and yeah, and that wasn't our intention tonight either, we just, I think like Henry said, it was more of a, here's the potential situation and to kind of feel the waters. All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's see, what else do we have here? Shall we move to, where'd it go? New business, letter E. Was there someone else waiting? Discussion action, implementation of seasonal water use restrictions for May 1st, 2011.
All right, good evening. Ben Sherman, Department of Public Works. I'm here hopefully a lot earlier, well, on time this year, I should say. Looking for the board to consider, or actually vote to enact the water restrictions for the year. If you recall from last year, we are required by our Water Management Act permit to basically put some restrictions on the water usage during the months of May 1 through September 30th. We are looking for the calendar restriction this year. Keeps it much simpler in managing what happens with the water system. And we're here at this time prior to the May 1 requirement so that we can effectively notify the residents by April 15th. So I'm just looking for the board to vote, essentially declare a state of water supply conservation, which will keep us in compliance with our Water Management Act permit.
Ben, with all the rain we've had this year, what's the status of the various monitoring wells around the Commonwealth?
Actually, to be honest, I don't have the most up-to-date river stats. I could easily pull those for you.
Well, am I correct in assuming that we institute this conservation measures based on the good science, which means that the river levels are low?
Well, by going this route, which is the preferred route, just enacting the calendar restrictions versus going with the river monitoring, I believe will save us a ton of money in the long run. We would end up having to monitor on a daily basis the river flows at a certain gauge station, which is in this case on the Blackstone River.
That part I understand.
Yep.
But so what you're telling me is the bureaucracy has given us two choices.
Correct.
We can base our decision based on science, based on actual river levels and well levels, which you say is going to be expensive, or just say, okay, from May to October, you got to reduce your water.
It's not reduce the water, it's imposing restrictions on how they use the water. I mean, what we encountered last year is the reality was there was more water used, but we restricted the times in which it was to be used.
How does that help the river flow?
It maintains a much better system in that we're not putting the stress on the water supplies, i.e., the groundwater sources which are connected to the rivers, during periods of high demand and, extreme, weather conditions like what we encountered last year. It's a much easier way to control the situation and to monitor.
Easier, that's
Yep.
correct. Easier for the government.
Well, it's easier for everybody.
Well, then if it's easier for everyone, why do we have to force them to do it? See, that's the part I have a hard
Because
time
it's
understanding.
mandated by the state and our Water Management Act permit.
Okay, mandates, I understand.
Yep.
I've got a gun, and I say, do this, or I'm gonna shoot. I understand that. That's, even my simple brain understands that. But, again, what I don't understand is, if it's good for everybody, why do we need the gun?
Because people won't do it without the pressure, period.
That's not my experience in life. People
been-
usually do the thing that's convenient, that makes sense.
Well, I guess my generic response to that is we have rules and regulations for a reason, and that reason is because people don't follow the rules or common sense. I can tell you right now, although we had a relatively, we didn't fine anybody last year, but I issued a handful of letters threatening fines to people that were watering their yard at a 100-degree day at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So the intent really is not to tell the people we're banning, water. We're restricting their, how much water they can use. We're just saying, let's be more educated in how we use it in order to conserve and lessen the impacts on the system, our system, as well as the whole basin.
Everyone with any knowledge of growing will know, or finds out quickly, that you don't water either lawns or plants in the heat of the day.
Right.
That's not a good practice.
But you'd be surprised at the irrigation systems that are on timers that people
Yes.
just don't
Yes.
update and change the
But
timer.
the best and most efficient way to combat that is to diffuse the knowledge.
Well,
And
public
imposing a
education
ban
without a doubt.
doesn't diffuse the knowledge.
Carrie, do you have a question?
Yes, last year, my memory serves, in our motion, wasn't the idea that we went with the ban, but that if we found that we were up above those mandatory test numbers, that we would do the testing, what was it, every third day or every 72 hours was the?
Yeah, I mean, in essence, we have two options. The first option is to go the easy route and just establish the water use restrictions during the months of May through the end of September. Or go into the stream stats, which means a daily monitoring of the stream stats.
It was very involved.
You have to exceed the threshold limits. I'd have to look up exactly. I think it was, you had to exceed or fall below the threshold limit for, I think it was a period of 3 days. We would have to then enact a water use restriction.
Which then ran a week or something like that.
It would
You
run
had to
until
test the
such
number
time
again.
as that the
Until it
water
was tested
levels.
again.
Yeah, the water levels rose above the threshold. And each time,
Right.
yeah, I mean, the problem with that is we could be turning this technically on and off throughout the season. The board only meets every 2 weeks. To be able to do this, to do a public notice on and off every single time is gonna cost money.
I'd like to make a motion, we implement the seasonal water and use restriction from May 1st through September 30th.
Wanna do this one?
Okay.
Go on.
I'm gonna make that motion.
No, it doesn't matter. I'd like to make a motion, we implement implementation of the seasonal water use restriction from May 1st, 2011 through May 30th, 2011.
You
September
need to
30th.
September
reread that.
30th, 2011. No, I didn't go down there. That's the same thing. I don't.
Maybe we nail the verbiage in there with the,
Yeah, and in addition, non-essential water usage is prohibited in the town of Uxbridge between the hours of 9 a.m. and 5 p.m.
Right.
Can we amend that motion to follow the policy that we have in effect? Because by saying, yeah, I was looking for the cheat
I got
sheet.
it right here.
But the because it's not, we have a policy, can we direct them to the non-essential policy that we have for the 9 to 5
Yes, oh, absolutely, yeah.
in the motion?
Okay, I'll make a motion that the Board of Selectmen declare a state of water supply conservation in accordance with general bylaws, section 336, water conservation and the town's MDEP Water Management Act, which requires that the town limit non-essential outdoor watering use through mandatory restrictions from May 1st, 2011 through September 30th, 2011. Non-essential water usage is prohibited in the town of Uxbridge between the hours of 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. That's the motion.
Do we have a second? Can I get a second? I'll second it. What's the concern?
Well, discussion?
Yeah.
I would like to, I mean, I think that I understand everything you're saying, but if the water levels are excessively high, I would see us revisiting this at some point if, similar to what we did last year. I mean, if we found that the water levels were up and that we were going to, not have an issue with hitting below the numbers, that we revisited it and didn't impose the water ban.
Yeah, I mean, I would just recommend that we go with the calendar restriction. It's much easier to control. We run the risk of not being in compliance, just based on the fact that, the fluctuations in the river we don't know, could go up, could go down. They could change, quickly enough that we would be out of compliance, in compliance. We have to do public notices.
What's the window when it starts, April 15th?
Well, according to our permit, we need to notify the public, the residents, by April 15th, so they know by April 15th that the restrictions are going to be put in place come May 1. This is something that's been in our permit. It's in the new permit. It was in the previous permits. Last year, we got caught without, we got caught off guard. And, last year was a unique year. But, again, the purpose is, to promote mandatory use restrictions, not limit how much water people are using. Because people
If they're mandatory, they don't need promotion. You need to promote good practice.
You need to promote education.
Mandatory is mandatory.
Yeah, but because not everybody complies, we have to, enforce or, enact these restrictions to get people to comply.
Motion and a second.
I mean, there's already communities around that have already started these, so we're kind of right in line with everybody else.
Well, we certainly want to be in line with other people, after all.
I think we want to be in line with good standard practice, and that practice is...
Just to give you some idea of how government works.
Oh, we don't have time for that, sorry. Sorry, Peter. We got a motion, we got a second. I think, do we want to amend the motion?
I thought we were in discussion.
We are, but I'd like to move,
Well, I know
water
you
off
would,
the table,
but you
if
see, the
possible.
whole idea is to accumulate some knowledge as we go along. Because good decisions come from good knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And don't give up an opportunity to acquire some little bit of knowledge. The Board of Health is in charge of private water wells. And the Board of Health requires that a private water well be able to deliver 1,200 gallons a day of water. And it might cost you an extra $5,000 to go from 400 gallons a day to 1,200, because you have to drill much deeper to make that. Now, the DEP sets standards for septic systems. All the water goes in your sink or toilet or tub goes into the septic system. And those standards are based on 110 gallons per day per bedroom, the assumption being that there are 2 people per bedroom. So a 3-bedroom house is 330 gallons a day. Actual water consumption of a 3-bedroom house generally is less than that, about 220, 230 gallons a day. So the Board of Health requirement of 1,200 gallons a day that you have to pay to have a well is far in excess of any reasonable requirement. So here we have one organ of government saying you have to be able to use this much water, and another organ of government saying, you got to cut down the use of water.
Dichotomy of government,
Only
most
in America.
definitely.
and East Gabon.
Are we looking at amending this motion such that we ask the director of the DPW to come back in July to give us an update?
I mean, again, I would like to just,
Just to revisit
I'd like
it,
to, plead to the board that we should just go with the calendar restriction. Again.
What would be the purpose of an update in July?
Did we, my question is, did we do that last year, or we just went ahead?
Yeah, and if the water levels are excessively high, you can revisit the motion and lift the water ban if need be.
You can always revisit a motion.
Yeah, I
Or
mean,
you
it could
would
always
like a
be
re-
revisited, but
But you would like a
I still
report.
recommend going with the calendar restriction. It's
So
by
what was
far
the
the
original
easiest thing to do.
You want me to read it again? You wanna read it back?
Sure. All right, motion by Mr. Desilets that the Board of Selectmen declare a state of water supply conservation in accordance with the general bylaws, section 336, water conservation, and the town's MDEP Water Management Act, WMA, which requires the town to limit non-essential outdoor water use through mandatory restrictions from May 1st, 2011 through September 30th, 2011. Non-essential water usage is prohibited in the town of Uxbridge between the hours of 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. Seconded by Ms. Pitman.
Can I offer to the board an amendment to that too, in accordance with the town of Uxbridge bylaws? So that everyone understands that that's
sure.
where the non-essential water usage is.
It's referenced in there. That's the,
That's the 336.
the general bylaw, section
It's section
336, I think
Oh,
it is.
okay, then add to, just to make that clear, when you say the general bylaws, section 336,
Says
the
gen-
Uxbridge general bylaws,
Just put Uxbridge.
just put the word
Yeah.
Uxbridge right there, that makes it cleaner. Thank you.
All right.
All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, but under duress.
Not under one of them.
Opposed?
Abstain against it, but under duress as well.
Thank you. No more duress for Peter.
Okay.
Okay. I apologize to the residents who are here for old business. Letter B, the Spring Annual Town Warrant, vote the intention to lay out streets of Lee Street, Glen Street, Anthony's Way, and Giacomo Way. I apologize for not addressing you sooner. So, with that in mind,
Now, this is not the official layout, this is
No,
just the
this is the
intention.
the intention to lay out,
And this
correct.
will basically start the process for the planning board to commence and post for legal notice
For
and
their-
conduct public hearings.
Okay. So I'll entertain a motion that the board vote the intention to lay out Lee Street, Glen Street, Anthony's Way, and Giacomo Way.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right. Is there anyone else here in the audience for a specific topic? I don't want anyone to stay unnecessarily. No? Okay. All right, let's move back and approve the meeting minutes of, excuse me, the 14th of March. There's 7 PM meeting minutes.
Just one thing before we do that, is Ben here for the
DPW
water?
fees.
DPW fees, could we do that?
Oh, yes. Sorry, Ben. So we move to old business, letter C, discuss action to the permitting fees for the DPW.
And what's a driveway permit for?
It's for basically all new development outside of a subdivision, existing lots
Yeah.
that are, somebody's gonna construct a home or a business,
Yeah,
and they're
yes.
basically.
But what are you gonna do for me?
I'm sorry?
What are you going to do for me?
Basically ensure that it's constructed in accordance with our regulations.
We don't have a driveway regulation.
But we got requirements in the DPW, we got standard
cuts.
guidelines, curb cuts.
And
Curb cuts, okay.
explain briefly what they are.
It ranges from, given the topography of the site, how it's supposed to be,
At the site's level.
well,
and
it's
the
either
road's
up or
straight.
down. There are no levels in Uxbridge, but essentially, it provides requirements on how they're supposed to construct the driveway connection.
Okay, so
In a cut situation, a fill situation,
So you give me a piece of paper that outlines that?
yes.
Okay, so where's the $50 come in?
It basically comes in for us processing the permit, processing the accounting portion of it,
What does that mean, processing the permit?
basically doing all the accounting, setting up the appointments, going out to see them, doing an inspection.
You do a physical inspection?
Correct.
Okay, how many?
Typically, I've only been involved with a few since I've been here, because predominantly, all the new construction has been within subdivisions, but typically it's been one.
One, okay. And who does it? One of the men?
Myself.
Yourself, okay. And you're the only one qualified to do that? Because state law says that the fee's supposed to be based on the lowest paid person who can do the work.
Yeah, consider I'm the only one in the DPW, in the administration office, correct.
So does the rate have to go up then?
Maybe we should raise this one?
That's what I'm thinking. 50's not enough then.
I'm sorry?
Does it require your, some special expertise that you have?
Well, considering both water, wastewater, highway, and parks are understaffed, I don't think it's feasible to request somebody to go out, and quite frankly, they're just not current with engineering standards. I don't see, at the current time, I don't see anybody else in the DPW that could do it.
Okay. When I put my driveway in, Larry was a DPW supervisor.
Mm-hmm.
And
You probably had Bob Gilchrist or Irving go out and do it.
this was way before Irving's time.
Then Bob
It was
Gilchrist.
Before Bob Gilchrist. This is, a long time ago.
Back in horse and buggy?
Yeah. And I told them where I wanted to do it, and they said, that's fine, and I did it, and that was it. Because the road is, in fact, level, and you have good sight on both sides, there's no curves right there. I didn't pay anything for permit. I didn't get permission.
Times have changed.
No, I
So let's
understand.
raise it and then
understand.
charge Peter.
Times
Yep.
have changed, Ben.
Yep.
But the law is very specific regarding fees.
Correct.
And the fee is supposed to cover the actual cost. And general phrases such as setting up the account and so forth aren't,
There's an inherent amount of time that it takes to process all these permits. And I think that's something that's missing here that people don't understand. Is it 5 minutes every time? Is it 10 minutes? Is it, is the inspection 5 minutes? Is it 20 minutes? It takes you 20 minutes to drive across town.
so that's the questions, and those are the things that the fee should be based on.
Mm-hmm.
Not some arbitrary, well, other towns charge $50 or $75, we're lower than them,
Right.
or in line with them, or so forth, so.
Yeah, I mean, I know that's an issue of concern. Although there isn't in the memo that I provided a detailed breakdown on every single fee, we did take a look at each one and tried to accurately depict how much time it takes, the equipment that's used. And as a cross-check, I know people don't like to hear this, you in particular, Peter, we checked around to see, are we in the ballpark? And more often than not, we were far below
Most
what other
towns
communities.
use permits as a revenue-generating process.
Mm-hmm.
And they get away with it because they get away with it. And because they get away with it, naturally, other towns want to do it.
Right.
But it's not right. It's not how it's supposed to be. And I'd like to stop cheating the people of Uxbridge if we are cheating them.
Right, I understand.
If we're not
And
cheating them,
and I totally
then
agree.
that's fine. If we're not charging enough, we need to charge more.
So are we cheating the people of Uxbridge on your list?
No, I think they are stealing from the town. Maybe not, stealing's a rough word.
Just
We could not provide these services. We are losing money. And, if we want to pick out water and sewer, water, for example, we are losing money. It costs us far in excess of what we're currently charging to go out and provide some of these services. It's just, we need to almost look at this, or we should look at this as if we're running a business. If we're not going to cover our own costs, we shouldn't do it.
Ben, I'm with you 100%, providing you do it in the most efficient way possible.
Correct.
Looking down here, final water sewer billing, $50.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how often do you read the meters?
Quarterly.
Quarterly, okay.
But this applies to people that are closing on houses. This
Yeah,
happens all the time.
Yeah, I know that. So if I move out of a house, for instance, I call the power company, I say, I wanna come and read the meter and send me a final bill.
Mm-hmm.
They come and read the meter and send me a final bill. There's no extra charge for that. Now, I notice somewhere it says you also check the meter.
Mm-hmm. They inspect the meter.
It's in the,
Yes.
Yeah, notes.
Now, when you read the meters quarterly, do you inspect the meter?
Only if they encounter an issue in the read.
Okay, so
But
what's the purpose of inspecting the meter simply
Because
because the owner is changing?
in this case, they're actually doing a final. They're doing a final for the purposes of a change in the account. They're actually getting a meter reading, and they're also checking, the equipment. It's the town's equipment that just happens to be in the house. So they're checking, the operation of the
going on
equipment.
the house and
But
not
they're
doing the
checking-
electronic read.
Correct.
Okay.
But they're
physically
checking
going-
the meter, checking the equipment for the benefit of the DPW, not for the benefit of the person who's moving out.
Actually benefit for everybody because, accurate equipment, goes towards everybody. I mean, I know it may be a small fraction of the population, but that all goes into the operation of the system.
So one house sells every 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
So in 9 years, the meter's checked 3 times to make sure it's operating properly. Another house hasn't sold for 50 years or 30 years, and the meter's never checked.
Well, they are
So
checked. 'Cause
something's wrong with the process of checking meters. Either,
No,
But
not necessarily.
If the
Not-
homeowner saw an issue with it, that there was a fluctuation that was dramatic, I would think then it's the
we're not talking about
responsibility of
this is
them.
routine. In other words, we're checking the meter simply because we're getting a final reading.
No, I understand that. I understand the process of it, but I don't necessarily agree with the comparison that you're making between the house that's being vacated and then purchased and lived in again, as opposed to the house that's being constantly
I don't
with
understand
one
why there's
resident.
confusion, because in one case, we're looking at the meter and checking the meter three times in 9 years.
Mm-hmm.
In another house next door, perhaps, with the same type of meter, can go 20 years with the meter not looked at.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, we're not checking meters because we have found over time that every certain number of years, meters tend to lose speed or gain speed or something, and that occasioned checking the meter. If that's the case, then meters should be checked periodically, irrespective of the fact that it called for a final reading.
Ben, do you get a lot of people calling and questioning their bills, that there's a fluctuation over the years that would
I
necessarily?
mean, on occasion, I wouldn't say it's high, but you get, once the billing cycle closes and, the reads go out and people get their bills, there are, a select, how many? Not too often, but there's always a few. Matter of fact, they always pick up a certain number that trigger, a setting in our system when they download or upload all the data. It'll either register low flow, high flow, and we go back and we reread. We go back, if we have to, we set up an appointment, we go in and inspect the meter. So it's not like this never happens. It does happen. The technology has improved over time. We can do radio reads now, so we don't have to go into every house. But if the question is $50 an excessive charge, I don't see how it is.
No,
Can
my question is completely different, Ben. My question is, because partially the $50 is justified by the fact that we're actually checking the meter itself.
No,
So if there's nothing to indicate that the mere selling of a house, a change of ownership, gives rise to an increased faulty meter, then, that shouldn't be part of it.
But it's part of the service that we
Reading the
provide.
meter.
It's not an additional requirement or a task that is causing the rate that we charge or the fee that we charge to be $50. We're there, that's a service we're providing during the course of the visit.
Can I ask you, is that optional? If someone is selling their home and all they want is their final number,
Then it won't
and the
have any
buyer doesn't
bearing
want
on
their
the
final
cost.
number, can they skip the,
It has no bearing on the cost whatsoever. That's just part of what they're doing when they're in there doing the check.
No, what I'm saying is, at a closing, can the parties both opt not to have the meter checked, and therefore the $50 be waived?
Nope, because they have to have a certified reading to be included with their closing.
And then closing, yeah.
It's an official close of the account, start of the new account. So they need an accurate reading, you know, by a certain date prior to the closing, so that they can close out the account and set up a new account.
But you don't go into the cellar to do the reading.
I'm sorry?
You don't go into the cellar to do the reading. You read the remote.
No, he's saying
They go into the house and read, because
Yes,
part
but
of the.
normally, you don't. When you
Correct.
do the quarterly reading, you don't go into the cellar.
Correct.
Okay.
I mean,
So-
if the water meter was out in the front of the house in a pit, we would be doing the same thing. It just happens to be in the house. We're getting lost in the minutia here of what I don't know. We're going in, we're doing an actual reading. Whether they're taking an electronic reading, or they're physically going down, taking the electronic reading, going in the house, reading the actual meter itself, inspecting the equipment, because you would be surprised at the number of times that they encounter illegal plumbing. You know, so this is a time for us to check and make sure our portion, our side of the meter, our service line is in good working order.
If that's the case, Ben, if in fact, when you go in to do and check the meter, you find where someone has bypassed the meter or something, that's an argument in favor of periodically going in all the houses that have meters to look at the meter. It is not an argument.
But again, I think you're getting lost in the minutia, because
No.
something like this, we need more staff. It's staff to, whether it's annually, quarterly, whatever frequency you're talking about, to have somebody go in. We have, Tracy might know quicker than I could, but I can't remember from the annual report. I think it's over 4,000 water connections. 4,000. We don't have the people in the water division to do just that. You know, that's.
If you don't have the people, Ben, it seems to me to be a waste of time to go in the cellar and check the meter when you don't need to go in the cellar and check the meter for the purposes of the property transfer.
But we can agree to disagree on that, but that's a service that we do to make sure that our equipment is in good working order.
And because it has to be part of the document, it has to be part of the sale, the transfer of the property.
I mean, it's
No.
the final meter
They
reading.
need a final water
Correct. They need
meter
a
reading.
final
That's all.
reading.
They don't care
Right.
where, you don't have to go
But
into the
that's what he's
cellar to do
doing.
that. That's what they want to do.
But to kind of go back to your question, that this is something we need to do on every house, it's not feasible to do it at every house on a frequent basis or on some kind of scheduled basis. So the opportunities that we get, the few and far, the ones that are few and far between, are at finals, when we have to do a final.
And we understand you don't have the personnel.
Yeah, I mean,
Getting
back to the list.
Yeah, can I
Are
just,
there other questions? Go ahead.
yeah, what's backhoe with operator and air compressor with operator? Just, what are those fees?
those are per hour fees for us to go out and do
Oh,
work,
for you all to work?
the DPW.
Okay, thank you.
When was the last time that those were charged? I don't know. I'd have to go back and check. But there are situations where we go out and have done work. I think,
So like if my water main on my house is an issue, you're gonna charge me the $100 an hour to send the town backhoe out to dig it up? Is that like the circumstance that these
yep,
fees kick
you
in?
know, one that comes to mind was, I believe there was a break some years ago over in the Hannaford's Plaza. And we did the work in the Hannaford's Plaza, not in the buildings, but in the parking lot. And that service was billed out.
So Ben, earlier you said that you were concerned that these dollar figures weren't representative of the work. Right.
I mean, if you.
Is there a revised sheet that you are?
Actually, if you I didn't highlight it, or at least it didn't show up, but I can tell you which ones. The water on and off. That's a request. People come in, or say they're going to go south for the winter. They want to turn off the water. It's a fee that is charged for us to go out and basically close up the system. That one changed. That one went.
Why would they do that then? They have a shut-off in the cellar. Why
Because
would
they
they want it
still
set
have
up
to
at the
pay the
street?
Because they can
minimums.
shut it off in the house, but there could still be a leak. And they're responsible for, it happens all the time.
Okay.
I can tell you one, and I think it was somewhere over Hazel Street. And the only way we found it was we were going to do a final at the house next door, and they noticed that the irrigation backflow on the side of the house had about 6 inches of water or ice. It was encased, and it just had a constant leak. And these people were in Hawaii for the winter. You know, we were able to contact them, get in there, shut it off, got in the house through some neighbors. There were problems. There was a small leak because of the freezing. It didn't damage the meter, but it damaged the pipe coming in.
Do you also look at the overrun numbers to find those issues?
Oh, yeah. I mean, and again, a lot of those come up when we upload the data from the meter reads. You know, we have kind of a threshold where it looks at these numbers and it flags low reads, high reads. We go out and reread. You know, in most cases, we actually set up appointments. We get in, because we got to get in the house. We need to check the meters. The meter fouled up. Is it not operating? You know, if it's a low read, like I said, there have been times where they've gone in the house and somebody has actually taken the meter out and put in a straight piece of pipe. So they're basically stealing water. So you name it, it's happened. So it could be a wide variety of things that occurs.
So circling back, you're saying $30 is
Give us a price.
too much, too
you've
little?
in- you
No,
said you
that
increased that
changed.
one.
That actually went up from, I think it was 25,
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, that changed.
$20.
So
you
this
know.
is your recommended list?
Yes, this is the recommended list.
But you just said
Oh,
2, 3,
a
4,
half hour
5,
ago you
6.
thought it was too low.
I'm sorry?
You thought the people were stealing from us on this list or the prior
so
list?
this is the updated proposal?
That is the updated
Okay,
proposed
So
list.
Do you
$20 was,
stand behind this? This is-
Yes, I do.
This is your
Okay.
list of.
People aren't stealing from us.
Right.
They're just
I
getting a
understand.
very, very good deal.
I'll entertain a motion that the board concurs with the DPW fees in the memorandum dated 12/28/2010, which is attached to the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
What about the, part about the emergency calls?
I'm sorry?
Oh, those were the footnotes
Those were the
on the
footnotes.
table.
That we should consider specifying emergency calls as after 2 hours and a 2-hour minimum.
That was a footnote for number 1, Peter, for the permit type, what are on/off working hours, the 1.
Yes,
Yeah,
I know
he said
that.
we should
Okay.
consider. Are we
We should
considering
consider
it or are we
Do
doing
you
it?
want to consider it, or?
What's
But
your
he hasn't put
recommendation?
forward, though, you haven't put forward
Actually,
formal
we- the-
recommendation on that with hours.
Right.
Like
well,
what the
because we
rate
don't
would
know.
be
It's a
per
time and
hour.
materials, but it should be a minimum. I mean, right now, the DPW, we get called, you know, after hours by contract is a 2-hour minimum. So, you know, regardless if they're there for 10 minutes
It's
or,
still 2
you know,
hours.
2 hours, they get paid for 2 hours.
costs us 2 hours.
It costs us 2 hours regardless.
So this is your recommendation?
Well, I mean, doesn't it, my only question though, isn't that part of what we pay as in our water and sewer rates? I mean, to cover something, I mean, if they come out, if there's an emergency and there's a pipe issue,
But this
For a
is
shut-off.
an issue that covers an individual property owner, not the system itself. If it's the system
Correct.
itself, that's covered by the rates.
Right.
If it's my pipe from the street that's broken, then that's my issue, not,
Right. We do pipe and labors all the time for rework that we're doing in conjunction with maybe like some remodeling that's going on. I'm trying to think of some other examples most recently. But basically, when our guys go out, they fill out a pipe and labor form. So they record their time. They record, you know, the materials that they use. And that gets billed to the account holder
okay, so
for
those.
those changes.
But those are already covered within, I guess my recommendation.
Those are already
to
covered
you-
under,
Under labor, 2 times
Yeah.
the average bill rate,
Yep.
correct? Okay, so are you then, I guess to answer Peter's question, are you happy with the fees that you put forward? Or is
Yes.
there an additional fee you would like us to consider with your footnote for number 1?
basically, I'm satisfied with the fees that are set here, but just, again, highlighting the fact that after hours, it should be a 2-hour minimum.
And I
Cover the
agree,
cost of the work.
I agree.
because you're doing something at the request of an individual,
Mhm.
and if they have to be done after hours, I mean, the individual, you know, if it's an emergency, they're gonna say, come out now, but if it's not, doesn't have to be after hours,
Correct,
right?
correct.
So,
It's just
Well,
straight
we've already
pass-through of our
concurred.
costs,
Yeah.
so it's, it costs us double, it should cost.
so, you see,
Service.
it's not a fee in particular that I'm against. You know, the fee should cover the cost. If the cost is real, I don't have any objection to that. My objection comes when I think it's not
Right,
real.
it's not founded.
But we're
So I would
covered by
make
the
a motion that we,
Yes.
No, we are covered by
We're
the
covered,
motion.
because we,
Got it.
these are his recommendations in general, we accepted all his recommendations.
And his memorandum dated 12/28/10.
He's going to impose that, and we concur with what he's going to
Yeah,
do.
We concur with his prices and his,
Actually, if I can muddy the water, just for a brief second.
No?
Because I actually just noticed something here. It was voted at a separate time when they voted back in 2008, the actual connection fees. I have a typo under the water connection over 1 inch per 1/2 inch diameter. It's 5,000 plus. I have written 1,000. It's $1,200.
Okay, so.
And that's in accordance with the connection fee that was adopted by the board back in, I think it was, I know it was 2008.
Okay, so that's just a typo back.
That's just a typo
Okay,
on my
right.
part.
So it's, but the right, then our motion would still stand.
Yep.
Okay. All right, as long as we're on these, everyone had the opportunity to review the, conservation fees included here. We discussed that
are they,
They're all Mass General
Yep.
Law based, so
Right,
there is no
exactly.
action for the board.
there's nothing for us to do, just wanna bring that to everyone's attention. That's conservation. And then take a look at the board fees.
And the one thing I just want to note on conservation for board members that haven't been on the board that long, conservation, correct me if I'm wrong, but conservation several years ago at town meeting, went for a bylaw to charge fees. Was it a bylaw? They asked to charge fees, specifically at Pout Pond. And it passed, but then they did not enact those fees, so just so you're aware, they have the ability to.
But I think that's like a, kind of like a separate issue with where conservation plays a role with filing the notice of intents and so forth, so it's like two different animals.
Right, but I'm just letting,
Right, yeah.
just letting,
Yeah.
you know, like, for instance, Jay, for you to, they can impose use fees at Pout Pond, but after they were given the power to do that, they chose not to. So if you hear about fees associated with that, that's what it is, and not specifically this.
didn't this go up last year too for something?
Yeah,
To
they're-
cover the cost of the weed,
Right, and
discussed
that
it
came
at
out of the
some point.
Wetlands Act, then
Yeah.
that's okay, that's fine too, right.
Okay.
Okay, so for our board fees, does anyone have any
I
comments?
didn't see any board fees in the,
Is it, go back one more, from,
Right, keep
going back
one more
side.
right there.
there you go.
oh, okay.
I looked at MGL to see which of these were based in state law, and I didn't find much except for the automatic amusement device. And by state law, it's set at $20 or such other fee as town meeting sets. Well, we went and looked in town meeting in the 90s, there was an article, and it didn't set an actual fee. What it did is empower the Board of Selectmen to annually set the automatic amusement device fee with a maximum of $100 per machine, which is also the state maximum. And apparently, at some point, it was set at that maximum of $100, which is probably fairly steep for.
Seems excessive.
Didn't we change it already?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and we have received, you know, questions or concerns or complaints, whatever you want to call it, from a couple of businesses within the communities that for $100 a machine, it's quite expensive to run that machine, and if you have 1,000 machines, to pay $1,000 every year and see if you're going to get compensated back and forth for that or whatever. I know Peter doesn't want to hear this, but surrounding communities do charge around the $25 charge, which is.
What do we do?
We make money on their money.
No, what do we do? What work is involved? We issue the license,
Yeah.
automatic amusement device,
Yeah.
and a person puts in the machine.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what do we do?
Well,
Do we go and play the machine and see if it's playing properly? What do we do?
no, the machines are checked out and,
By who?
by the Public Safety Committee. They check out the machines.
No, wait a minute. A committee doesn't check the machine. No, why can't we be serious? We're talking about $100 per machine.
Well, that's why we're saying, we
Okay.
recommended, we changed that to $25.
Okay, but forget the figure for a minute. I'm trying to come up with some reason for the 100 or the 25 or the 1,000. So the question is, what work do we do? Who actually goes out to check the machines?
Right now, Chief Freitas is checking the machines, or having staff check the machines. They
Okay,
count
so the police
machines,
department
they-
is charged of check. Now, what does he check them for? To see if they're physically there? What is he looking for?
Yeah.
Make sure they're not rigged.
Is that answer
Yes,
to
yes,
her
yes,
question? They're
yeah,
not rigged?
it's- yeah, it's
How
a
do they
little bit of
determine that
everything.
it's not rigged?
Well, that's not my responsibility,
the
so I'm not
machine-
sure what he really looks for, but I think the $25 covers the cost of the town's inspectional and processing fees.
You think that?
I do.
And that thinking is based on, what, the chief telling you that $25 is okay?
No, in discussions with surrounding communities.
In
and-
surrounding communities?
And I know you don't want to hear that, but that's what I think. It's the
What did
board's fees.
MGL say? Minimum $20?
No, it sets it at 20 or such fee as set by
Right, so
town meeting
minimum
with
is
a
20.
maximum
If it
of
sets it
100.
at 20, we have to charge at least 20.
Right. Or.
No, it doesn't say that.
Or
It said
max.
$20 or such
or
fee
fee
is set by a town meeting.
Town meeting didn't set the fee, they gave it to the board to set
Yes.
the fee.
Correct.
So would that be our decision? Yeah. What happens with Mantown, where you sell these automatic
Well,
machines?
that's a good example, because exactly, Mantown wanted to have the operation where they would open that up to the public, but due to the cost of paying for these machines, it was not
So it doesn't apply
feasible
if you're
to.
selling the device, it's only if you're
Correct.
making money with it.
Entertainment,
Correct, yeah.
personally.
But that's a perfect example of a business in the community.
Did you discuss with Scott Freitas,
Yeah.
the $25?
Yeah, and he had no objection.
He had no objection.
Yeah.
So all the years that we've been charging 100,
Yeah, I'm not sure if he knew, the specifics prior to me talking to him with regard to the fees.
well, that's interesting, because,
But I can't, I'm not 100% sure.
okay, all right. So we're not sure. We think the chief is doing it, but we don't know who's doing the
Or someone on
inspection.
his staff.
Somebody on the staff.
How
We
often?
don't know
Once a
what they're
year?
looking for, really.
Once a year.
See, the whole idea of this exercise, ladies and gentlemen, is just to look at it and see if we're in compliance with the law. I don't want to overcharge people for something, and I don't want the town to incur a real cost that we're not being reimbursed for. That's the purpose of it. It's not it's $100 or $50 or $8,000. Is it justified? Is it real? I find out in the Board of Health that we're charging people fees, and we're not doing anything, not a single thing. And we're paying somebody to do some work that's apparently not being done.
They do that at the building
So
department,
you
too.
need to look at these things and really look at it, and not just get a flim-flam answer from somebody that they want, well, I want to get beyond this, I don't want trouble with this.
Are there other fees here, Peter, that you have concerns about?
Well, I'd like somebody to explain to me why $1,200 for a gravel permit is not outrageous. I know you don't have to give an answer.
That's the first, when they
But-
pull up the first time.
Yeah, that's the first thing.
Okay, I'll give an argument why I think that we should, and I know you're not gonna like this, but, and I think it goes along with both, that there's a part in these fees that helps the town regulate what type of business comes to town, in a sense. I mean, if you have no gravel permit fee, is there a possibility that Uxbridge could become the center of all
Well,
gravel
it would be.
pits
It would be.
in the town? Because if you're looking for a gravel pit and there's no fee to start your business, then you might as well buy the next commercial lot and start hauling gravel. Well, the more
Assuming
trucks,
that there's
wait a
some
minute,
gravel
Peter.
there to be hauled.
Well,
There
from
is
what
not
it
gravel
seems, every time
everywhere.
there seems to be a lot, gravel's dirt. There's dirt everywhere,
No,
Peter.
no, I beg to differ, and that's the problem. We have people
But who are
making
you gonna
decisions.
say? Exactly, if there's no fee, then
Gravel
what's
is not dirt. Gravel is stone ground up by Mother Nature.
So
Various sizes of stone.
Peter,
It's not clay, it's not subsoil, it's not loam. It's a very specific thing.
What do you think would be a more appropriate fee for the first time?
I will tell you that it
gravel
used to be
permit?
$100. It went from $100 to $1,200 with no justification, except that the young lady who said she walks into a gravel pit and doesn't know what she's looking at, set it at $1,200, hoping to get a portion thereof, or
But
to
wait a
justify
second.
her pay.
But my point is this, I don't see a larger amount on a gravel pit that unreasonable. Because in order to haul gravel, they are big trucks usually. And those trucks are driving on our town roads. And those trucks driving on our town roads have a detrimental effect on our roads.
And those big
And-
trucks pay an enormous fee to be registered to drive on our roads. Do you know what it costs to register those big trucks?
No,
It's
but I
not
think
like
you're gonna
registering a
tell me.
car, it goes by weight.
But they're
They
registered
pay
with-
for that.
They're registered with the state, not with the town.
I know that.
Right?
Actually, the
But the
town then, but the
fee-
town can get, if they are overloaded, we can get money from
Yes,
those
on the
trucks
fine.
running on the
If they run
fine.
overweight.
On the
over-
fine.
And most of them, every truck that goes through Uxbridge, majority of them are probably overloaded. Majority of all trucks are overloaded. The question is, are they gonna get caught or not?
Right, exactly.
Especially in Uxbridge, with so many of our bridges where our weight limits are down, it's very hard to come into Uxbridge without violating the weight limit. So,
But Cari is absolutely wrong when she looks to the idea that people can make some money, and therefore we can charge a bigger fee.
I didn't say that, Peter. I said they're using our roads and
No,
gravel
that-
with it. I don't
came
see
in
that.
later. You began by saying
I
that
didn't
people
say
are
I
gonna make
agreed
money
with
selling
it.
gravel.
Well,
The bigger the fee.
why would you open a gravel pit if you weren't gonna make money?
Because
it's
you
a
wanna,
nonprofit?
you wanna get rid of the gravel.
Oh, they make money. Come
They
on,
make
Peter.
money, Peter.
They may make money, they may lose money, but the reason, many times, they wanna get rid of the hill of gravel. But you cannot, under the law, use this as an excuse to make money.
I understand that, Peter.
All you do is you promote the more quick extraction of it, because person doesn't wanna pay $12,000 over a 10-year period to remove gravel, he'll move it more quickly. And it's a reason for people not to get a permit. And it's very easy not to get a permit. But give me a reason. Cari gave a reason. Bruce, you're in favor of the $1,200.
Yes, I am.
Would you like to give a reason for it?
Mike?
You don't have to. And people can look at you and say, well, he doesn't want to give a reason.
There, Peter, most people that do gravel pit are making money. Let's be real about it.
Okay, so that's your reason. They're making money.
Well, they're making a load of money.
You hope they're making a load of money.
I know they are.
Why don't we impose a income tax on people that have gravel pits? Why don't we do that? At least it'll be a legal tax. And why don't we go to every business, every restaurant? If they make money, why don't we raise the fee? Because right now, we charge a fee when the Board of Health inspects the restaurant, we check the coolers and so forth, we charge a fee. Maybe we should use Bruce's idea
You're gonna run the town out of business,
and
doing it the way
say,
you're doing it.
except that's not what the law is, Bruce. The law does not say you can do that. The law says the fee is supposed to cover the cost.
Well, it's the cost of them using our roads.
No, the fee is supposed to cover the cost of issuing the fee and doing whatever inspection, not a fee to recover the cost of roads. You can't do that, Bruce.
How many people inspect gravel pits, Peter?
Right now, none.
There you go.
So there should be no fee.
Is that your recommendation, Peter?
No, that's not my recommendation. I'm just answering his question.
Do you have a
I knew
recommendation
the
on a
answer to
fee?
that.
Do you have a recommendation on an annual fee amount?
It used to be $100, and the
Is that
renewal
your
was
recommendation?
25. I want the board to think and give logical reasons for something. The fact that someone makes money, if they lose money, do we give them back the fee?
No.
Or do we pay someone to do something if they're losing money, to help them break even?
Oh, they've taken the calculated risk.
That's right. And they're entitled to a gain. And if they make money, guess what? They pay an income tax. And the town of Uxbridge gets some of that from state aid, don't we? But that's not what the fee is for. And I don't know why that concept is hard for all of you to understand.
So what would you recommend?
I'm asking, why is it $1,200?
I'm asking, what would you recommend?
What do you recommend?
$100 is more than enough for the legitimate work of looking at the plans and going out and looking at the work.
Which town employee looks at the plans?
Right now, no one. It's the board's responsibility because it's the board's bylaw. But the board doesn't do its job.
You're talking about yourself, too.
Absolutely, I'm not excluding myself. We're not doing our job. I'm a member of the board.
Well, wait a minute, hold on. The last gravel pit that came before us, I don't know, I remember going out and driving through the gravel pit. Did you drive through
went
it?
out there.
Did you go through and drive through the last gravel pit that we approved?
Which one was that?
The one over, across from Wheelixville?
Oh, yeah,
Okay, so we all did our job there.
but that wasn't a gravel pit.
It was a gravel pit.
Yes, it was.
Yes, it
Oh,
was.
wait a minute, you're talking about the one, where they wanted to go
Next
into
to
Pout
Pout
Pond?
No, not that one.
Laurel.
No.
Brook was the last one.
No, I'm sorry, when we actually did an inspection. It was the one across from Wheelixville, right on
Yeah.
that side street.
Henry Street.
Henry Street.
Thank you.
That's not a gravel pit.
Okay, that was
They
the
took a
last,
lot of gravel out of there.
But it's not a gravel, he doesn't need a gravel removal license.
that was the last one that we were asked to go out and
We just
inspect.
gave
Yeah.
them,
And we
just
all went out
kissed-
and inspected
Kissed the
it.
money goodbye then.
So then, if it's based on what you're saying, and you feel that the rate is too high, I don't know, last I checked, I didn't get a paycheck from here, so if the job is, we're the ones that are doing the inspection, and we don't get paid anything, then the fee is based on the salary of the administrative staff that assists us in getting everything ready for us actually to do the inspections.
Technically, I guess that's right.
And then, you know, in theory, the gasoline or the mileage for reimbursed for us to do that is about really, you know, to be taken into account, not that we are,
Or inspection? How do you know what you're inspecting?
So you're looking
oh,
at
there is no training.
Oh, we should have training.
on-the-job training.
Well, our last gravel pit inspector stood right there and said on television, I walk into a gravel pit and do not know what I'm looking at. And the Board of Selectmen said, well, you are just the person we want in this job.
Are there any other
And that's verbatim.
Are there any other proposed annual fees for the gravel pit other than Peter's $100? Just for the first-time permit?
Well, Mike just made a point that I think is worthy for everyone here is, should Ben be advising the board on these?
Why?
He's an engineer.
He's the
Huh?
engineer.
He's an engineer.
Or someone
What does
from D-
engineering have to do with it?
Well, for one thing, stormwater runoff with gravel pit.
That's a different issue. That's an operational issue that might become an issue. But that's not an issue in granting the permit. The permit is to remove sand, soil, loam, or gravel from a parcel of land within the town of Uxbridge.
But you can place restrictions on that based upon topography or anything else, based on the advice of an engineer.
That's correct. That's correct. And that would be a function of the topography that's there.
Okay, could that, when that does happen, and since I've been on the board, I don't believe we've had an engineer review any of the plans. But is that in the intent for why the annual fee is so high, to cover the costs of having an engineer review those plans?
We've never had an engineer review the plans. The plans are
I didn't
prepared
say
by an
whether
engineer.
we had, but
Yeah.
was that in the intent of why the fee was as high as it was? So that
would
we
think
would
so.
have the money in order to have an engineer. So we had a
No,
fee.
No, that was not the intent, because we never did hire an engineer. There was never any request to hire an engineer. We just raised the fee.
So
Which
back
is
to
not
my
unusual.
question, is there any other proposed fee other than, we have Peter's $100?
Sounds like an administrative task, why do we even give out permits?
Because the bylaw says
Says
the
we have to
Board of
do it.
Selectmen issues a permit.
So we should maybe address that.
Okay,
And if it's initial permit, we have to hold a public hearing. So we advertise it. There's a cost to advertise.
why don't we do this then? Here's a idea. An annual fee of $50 to go along with our annual renewal fee of $50. However, in the event that the town is going to decide to hire an engineer to review the plans, you then pay fair market value of the cost of the engineer. So, because we don't know what is coming down the road, but we don't wanna put ourselves in the situation where we have an applicant come before us.
Yeah, you raise a good point. So I would back up and say, now, in this situation, this is probably where you'd want to review your policy. Because I think in your policy, it references having a review. That might be the route to go and hold
What
off
policy
on.
are you talking about?
Gravel permit policies that kicking around, that are old and that do need to be updated.
Because there
So
could
maybe
be an
tonight-
instance
Exactly, so maybe
where
tonight
we
you just
would
wanna
wanna hire an engineer.
postpone your
and-
fees and revisit the gravel policy. If you have any other concerns with any other fees, you can revisit that, but,
For our next meeting, we should look at the policies as well as
right.
come back to ours.
But certainly I would revisit the gravel policy.
Anything
Would
to put
agree with
things
that.
off. I think that's a great idea.
Not trying to put them off, Peter. Want to make sure we have all the information or making an educated decision.
Is there any other annual
Based
fees that
upon what's needed.
concerns anybody?
Yeah, just going for any other fees that concerns anybody?
What was the $15 one-day entertainment license?
Yeah, I just want to
right?
point that out. The annual entertainment is $25,
Mhm.
$15 for the one day. The one-day beer and wine was also $15, and that includes processing the application, the processing the license, Cari check, and so forth. So you can concur with this fee schedule with the exception of the gravel permit, if the board pleases. And
I'll make a
revisit.
motion that we concur with the Board of Selectmen license
are
permit
the-
fee schedule dated 3/28/11, with the exception of the gravel permit fee, which we'll visit at another meeting.
Can I make a recommendation? We would not concur with the Board of Selectmen. We are the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
That we agree with our own
Right.
license permit
Right.
fee schedule. Do we have a second?
Just clarification, is it $25 on automatic and muse that we are with what's
That's
written?
included, yeah.
Yeah.
Do we have a second?
Can you read that motion back, please?
Sure. Motion by Mr. Desilets that the board concurs with this fee schedule dated.
No, sorry, we don't concur. Oh, I'm sorry, with the fee? No, wouldn't we just approve them? They're ours. We're not concurring. It's our,
That the
they're our
board
fees.
Approve.
Approve.
Approve. Thank you.
The fee schedule dated 3/28/11, with the exception of the gravel permit.
I have a question.
Oh,
The
yeah.
automatic amusement
Yeah.
device thing. How many devices does a typical place have?
It can range, it
And
ranges.
what we have right now in town. Are they 4, 5, 6, 7, 10?
I'd say the average would be 6 to 7, but they do go as high as 10.
Okay. I can see if, assuming that somebody from the police department actually goes out there to look at a machine, I can justify $25. But there's a scale. So if you're already at the place and they have 5 machines, it's not $25 for each machine. It should be a reduced amount, because you're already there, and you're checking for whatever you check and so forth. There's economies of scale.
The only thing
I
that,
think should take place.
the only thing that I would raise as something that may fall under this category, although we don't have one here, but if you had a location that had a large amount of automatic amusement devices, such as an arcade, where you could have 200 units in a location, and if they're going in and having to look at all those units, there could be an argument why you would want the fee, because it could take days.
Right, because you could
at that
actually go
location.
into an establishment and that machine could be down all of a sudden that day, and they'll have to go back the next day or so. I mean, it can fluctuate either way. There could be.
Do we have any places that have 200 machines?
We don't in Uxbridge.
Oh, okay, all right, so I'm trying to think in terms of reality here.
Yeah, when it comes to
And
that
my
point.
only point is,
Yeah.
there's a certain minimum cost of going to a location and checking this machine. It's not double that cost to check the second machine, is it?
No, and that,
Okay.
and that's, yeah.
And that's the only point I'm making.
Per location.
But I don't see $25, even if it's 10 machines. Remember, the
How much
individuals
is it?
that are going are the police
How much
officers.
do we pay for a
Which-
detail per hour?
A police officer?
$40 an hour.
Yeah, 40, 50, yeah.
No, it's not based on, it has to be by, look at the state law. It's the salary, you base
Of
it
the
on the
lowest
salary of the
person, which
lowest
is
person
still a
who's
police
able to
officer.
do the job. But it's not their detail rate, it's their hourly rate.
Right, but they gotta get in the
Plus the-
car, they gotta go there, they
No,
gotta.
I understand
okay,
that,
yeah.
I understand all that, but we can't use a detail rate and then add all those other things to it.
So Peter, would you like to adjust the automatic
I'm
amusement
just
device?
giving it out for thought, because
Okay.
it seems to me logical that, if, rather than reduce them all to $15, what is it?
$25.
$25, from $100, I think the second machine shouldn't be $25. It should be some amount less than that, or the machines after that.
We
Or
have,
if I would be happy with $30 for one machine, and then, $10 or $15 for additional machines.
How long does it
Unless
take?
someone can tell me that, gee, I really have to spend 20 minutes checking each machine.
should we amend the motion to agree with the exception of the gravel permit and the automatic amusement device?
Yes.
And ask the public safety to give us some input?
It's not public safety. If it's the police chief that does it, it's the police department that does it.
Whomever in
Yeah.
the Uxbridge Police Department does it.
We don't have a public safety department.
Okay.
Okay, second.
We have a public safety
Safety
committee, but we
commission.
don't look at
Right.
That's
this.
correct.
Give it a
Do
second.
you have a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Everyone's second scared today. Okay. Permitting, done. Bruce, can you give us an update? Old Business, New High School?
Well, there's only one thing that went on, was the sub bids came in, they were opened, and the electrical bid is being contested. But we still have a meeting Wednesday for the GMP,
The final GMP, right?
final GMP. But there's one, the electrical, I don't think will be settled by then. They're just gonna take the highest, second price.
Okay.
The winning bidder, which was Interstate, has assigned counsel to defend the bid. And the hearing initially was scheduled for the 4th, but their counsel has requested it, because of a conflict, that it be moved to the 6th. So it won't be settled before the next meeting, certainly.
Okay.
But I would ask him to ask for an expedited decision, which is something you can do under the bidding rules, to get this done so we can have a maximum price as soon as possible.
How does that affect Wednesday's meeting, or does it? And finalize it?
Well, they can assign a maximum price based on the second lowest bidder.
Right.
Let's do it, that's the one I'm gonna use, I think.
My understanding, Bruce, is that the bid request went out before they were reviewed by Mike. Is that correct?
I've never seen the bidding.
You've never seen the bid. Now, how does that happen?
They were in there, sealed up.
No, I mean, I never saw the.
He never saw the.
I never saw the bid either.
I never saw the
I'm not talking about
IFBs.
the bids, I'm talking about the request for
RFPs.
bids, the RFPs.
The proposal
IFBs,
itself.
invitation for bids.
Yeah.
He's the chief procurement officer.
Right.
He's supposed to see those and check them before they go out.
Check them for what?
Compliance with the procurement rules.
And did you bring this up as an issue with the SBC or
They were out before I knew they were out.
JMA,
They were out before I knew they were going out.
or have you spoken to anyone since?
I've spoken to David regarding one of them. That was and there was an
David
email.
Kravitz?
Yeah,
Okay.
and I was, but right now it's too late. I mean, we need to move forward.
Is there any repercussion to the town from Attorney General for not following the procurement laws on this? Or is there a
Well, I mean,
procurement law violation, or?
It's not a violation per se. I mean, I just would have,
It's procedural.
I would have preferred to, there was one other bid protest. I don't think I could have done a thing about the electrical bid. There was another bid protest that was withdrawn, and I would have liked to have had a shot at that, because I think that was something that could have been caught at our end, but it's been withdrawn, so I guess it's not a problem now.
Remember back when we were supposed to have a meeting with the school building committee because of communications issues? And I said, it's not a question of communications issues. The problem is with the school building committee.
Well, Mike was at the openings.
Being at the opening, it doesn't count.
But Mike has also been at all of the school building
I
committee
don't think it was a
meetings as
school building
well.
meeting.
It's not that, no, the point is that
Great idea.
he's the chief procurement officer.
I think Jocelyn should
The
have sent it
bids
to me, not
before they
them.
go out
I mean, they're
should be
they're
reviewed by
running
him
this.
to make
Well,
sure
hold
they
on, we have
comply
two
with all the
conversations.
rules. And it was bypassed, the Kravitz just did it and sent them out. Apparently, no one told him, this is how it has to work.
Well, my concern is that Jocelyn and Lesher should know how this is supposed to work. I mean,
Yeah,
my
but they
understanding
don't.
is we're not the first building that they have been the managers on, correct? So aren't they supposed to know what procedures are supposed to be followed?
Well,
this
we
is
don't
something
know
we
if
can bring
other
up as a
towns,
concern.
other jobs with the same setup, we don't know that. But in Uxbridge, Mike
but the
is the chief
procurement, the
procurement
Massachusetts-
officer. The school is being built by the town of Uxbridge, not by the school department. Once it is built and accepted, then it's turned over and is under the control of the school department.
Oh, he was at the table, it's not my fault, he
No,
didn't.
I'm not saying it's your fault.
No,
It's not your fault. Don't get that impression.
That's what I thought you
I don't,
meant.
think it's
No.
not the school building committee's fault. I mean, they didn't write these things.
No, I know that.
Okay.
But the reason that I sensed the problem, and the reason I wanted to sit down with the school building committee was to make sure that they understand how it's supposed to work. And instead, it became a seminar on communications, which didn't get anywhere. But, they need to understand that no request for proposals such should go out without being reviewed by the town manager.
So you said you spoke to David about that, correct?
I spoke to him about one of the other issues, the one that went out first, because I did have concerns. And you saw that string of emails regarding the environmental
Right.
testing, and I had real concerns about that. But, frankly, I've never, in my professional life, never had bids go out without reviewing them first. In
So you took
projects
this
I've
up
done
with them,
before.
and you set them straight on this?
I haven't had the opportunity to sit down with David on a one-on-one when the process went by last week. They were busy afterwards, so,
But last
but I
week,
will talk to him.
it started like a month and a half ago, right?
Well, I don't see David on a regular basis. But, I mean, once they went out, I mean, there's gonna be no more bids, we're done.
Correct.
So it's really academic at this point.
No, but I think it's worthwhile for you to raise their attention that we do have processes and that as
Well,
part of
it's
your
not,
job,
it's
you
not
need
my
to-
process, it's the IG's process.
Right, but you're the representative for the town, and to close the loop with this
Yeah.
issue and make sure that the co-chairs of the SBC are aware of it as well.
All right.
That's what I would
I would
recommend.
encourage you to do it and have that
Yeah.
conversation.
Definitely. Okay. As long as we're on the topic of the high school, let's jump to new business discussion action, new high school project license Salvatore W. Desilets, is that correct?
Desilets.
Desilets,
Yes,
18 Mill Street.
Very nice man, very cooperative. Town council has reviewed the license. I met with Mr. DeSillo. He reviewed it. I gave him the opportunity to take it and read it, so he had the opportunity not just to sign it, but to examine it.
Have it reviewed by an attorney if he
I don't
wanted
think
to.
well, obviously, there's a cost to that.
Oh, no, but he had it, so if
had
he
that
wanted to do
opportunity.
it, he had the option.
And he came and signed it, and simply, we need the counter signature, and I will send a executed copy to him, and I believe we have 3, so we'll keep one, and
One for him.
Luke, well, one for him, and Luke would like one on site.
On site, yeah, I agree, okay. And he didn't have any concerns, it's good, excellent. And this again is just for the use of that parcel of property
Yes.
while they're building out the
Yes.
entrance to the new high school.
Yes, there may be some slope changes. According to the license, he can require that we, if he withdraws the license, and he has the right to do that under the conditions of the license, we would have to restore the slopes. Town council has suggested, and just as a belt and suspenders approach, to do a taking of the land. But, you know, frankly, if it ever came to that, we can do the taking later. There's nothing to stop us from doing a taking 10 years or 20 years down the road if it ever became necessary.
Right.
Certainly, I don't think Mr. DeSillo would ever put us in that position, but, you know, land changes ownership eventually.
True, okay.
Mike, I didn't see a section where it refers to compensation on his part in any way. Why wasn't that included in his document?
He did not ask for compensation per se. All that he asked is that, based on the diminution of his use, that we, the assessor, look at the property, and he will be granted an abatement while his property is in use by the town.
That's a form of compensation, so why wasn't that noted in the license?
Well, it's not really,
Compensation.
it's not compensation, it simply
reflecting
recognizes
the change, the value, changed
that-
value of the
that-
property.
that the value is diminished during that period of time.
What is it?
According, the assessor looked at it and
Okay.
determined that he would lose the use of a portion of his property during that period. And,
1,300 square feet.
well, 1,300 plus, you know, you would lose access on that road and that sort of thing, so, I don't remember what the number was, but some percentage she was, thought was an appropriate, adjustment during that time period.
I'll make a motion that the board authorize the chair to endorse the license to enter and use real estate property by and between Salvatore W. DeSillo and the town of Uxbridge.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Let's stick with new business, letter C. Discussion action, change of manager, James Tessier, Polish American Club, Social and Civic Group, 217 Mendon Street.
Motion to approve the change of manager to James Tessier of the Polish American Social and Civic Club.
Second.
Just as a note, that we have here that, Chief Freitas is okay with this as well. All those in favor?
Aye.
We didn't have a second?
Aye.
Yeah,
You did-
you did
Oh, I'm
second.
sorry, did he? Okay, I missed that. That's right, we did second that.
Let's go back to, meeting minutes. Sorry for jumping around, everyone, but let's do our meeting minutes before we get into the, charter contract. So, Monday, March 14th, 2011, 7 PM. I'll entertain a motion to approve the 3/14/11, 7 PM meeting minutes as written.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then moving on to our executive session meeting minutes from Monday, March 14th.
I don't have that. I don't have that.
That's the next one, in your packet.
The backside.
It's on the backside. It's, mine's separate.
Oh, I see
Or-
it. I see it. I'm sorry.
Really, executive session ones.
Yeah.
Oh, you're doing,
Not, yeah, executive session, which, go back to your packet, Cari.
yeah, right here, right?
No,
Oh.
the original one. No, towards the front again. Sorry. Okay, right there.
Oh,
Those.
right.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the 3/14, 7:10 PM, I'm sorry, the 7 PM executive session minutes.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Now to the separate attachment of the 3/14 minutes. Under 7, Town Manager. The
Oh, yeah,
end of the
right.
second sentence, the Town Manager advised Glenn Hand, Building Inspector, had resigned. He advised the board,
Okay.
not Glenn Hand. I'll entertain a motion to accept the meeting minutes from Monday, March 14th, 2011, 7:10 PM as amended.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Done with minutes. All right, old business, letter D. Discussion action, charter communications contract. It's okay. Just trying to read slowly. The contract, charter?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Oh, my God.
She's reading a shopping list.
Okay,
not me.
Said gravel, water. It really was.
Loam,
Oh, my head is fried.
bottled
Device.
water. I mean,
Um,
one day
Yes,
permit.
Charter Communications contract. You all received that on Friday morning, I think is when it went out to you. There were some corrections made to it. One was one requested by the board, that we add clarifications to the prime rate. So in addition to, actually what we did is we ended up making it broader than just in that one section, because as you read through the contract, prime rate ended up being said, I don't know, I think I
Multiple
counted somewhere
times,
around
yeah.
20 times in the contract. So a definition section was added that just defined prime rate as that of the Wall Street Journal. Then in going through the final on it, it came to the attention of Attorney August that the effective date of the contract seemed to be ambiguous. And there was a question whether or not it was renewing on this evening if we signed it. Was it renewing when Charter signed it? And the whole process that came out of that was, at least my interpretation is that the reason why we were going so quickly was to get a contract in place before our other one actually expired on April 7th. Charter's process was, no, there's 2 date lines, so until the second party signed, it didn't become effective until the second sign date, because there were actually 2 signature lines. So to keep within the whole intent of the contract and to clarify everything, they actually put on the front cover page an effective date. And then if you note, you go to the signature section, they changed that around and again put an effective date in there. And now there is only one sign date, which would be the board's date, if the board so chooses to execute the contract, and they took out the other signature sign date. So the contract, when the board accepts it, will go into effect on April 7th. I guess if Charter has a problem with it, it's effective on April 7th, and then we deal with it if there's a problem after that. But Charter did not seem to have an issue with that. Their issue did raise, however, in that the sections that kicked in effective to the effective date, mainly the laying of the fiber. When they were negotiating, they're under the impression, well, our 90 days, that clock won't start ticking until it makes it all the way through our administrative red tape, which was gonna be closer to May 1st. So therefore, they needed that time frame. So, to keep within the spirit of, if it was actually signing on April 7th, they were gonna lose 30 days, and it was basically physically impossible for them to lay the new fiber in 60 days. So what we did then is adjust the 90-day time periods that kicked off of the effective date, moved them to 120, keeping within the spirit of the contract. So now the decision before the board is that if that acceptable.
Questions, comments? I find it acceptable.
I do.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just an emotion, right?
So,
Yeah.
I'll entertain a motion that the board endorse the revised Charter Communications contract that was approved by the board on 3/14/11 with an effective date of 4/7/11.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, discussion, sorry.
Yeah, thanks.
I didn't do that on purpose.
No, I understand. I want to make it clear, the board did not negotiate this contract. Members of the board negotiated it with an attorney and so forth, but the board did not negotiate the contract. The subscribers received no benefit from this contract that I can find. We spent, last count, $6,000 to hire a lawyer, and we spent $3,800 to survey the subscribers as to what they wanted. And they told us in no uncertain terms They do not want to be forced to pay for PEG access. And we've disregarded that completely, because we're still gonna force them to pay PEG access. In addition to the PEG access fee, which is a pass-through, as you know, we also want an additional $105,000. Now, I don't know where that came from. We have over $300,000 in the account already, not counting what we've already appropriated for this year's budget. And reducing it from 4%, 4.25% to 4%, it's not gonna make a big difference. So I don't know by what justification, by what logic, we're keeping that fee when the subscribers said very loud and very plainly they don't want to pay that much money, and they don't want to be forced to pay for PEG access. As to the 4%, we know how that's paid to us and how it's deducted, because it's deducted every month or added every month to subscribers' bills. But there's no language as to the $105,000. The language says it's a pass-through, so subscribers will pay for it. Will they pay for it in one lump sum? If that's the case, then if I'm a subscriber today and I pay that all at once and then I move, I'm gonna be unhappy because you've taken that money from me. But there's nothing in the contract to specify how that's going to happen. There's a provision in here that we have to give charter. The issuing of this is 13.4C. The issuing authority, that's us, shall prepare an annual report for the preceding calendar year, which records how the annual payment for PEG operation was spent and what amount remained unspent at the end of the calendar year. Now, this is something brand new. For the last 20 years, we weren't required to do that. Charter doesn't have to give us a report of how they spend the money they receive from subscribers. We tell Charter that in exchange for the payment of 4%, they have no responsibility for PEG access, except for the transmission of the signal. It's our responsibility. We should have no requirement to report to them how they're spending the money, how we are spending the money. But certainly, the subscribers are not receiving a single benefit from this renewed contract. We're just adding another tax onto them, contrary to their expressed wishes and desires. And I don't know how we justify that.
Well, I'll speak to a couple of those issues because I was in the negotiations, which I was in those negotiations as an individual that was put forward by the board. So I don't quite understand your point, Peter, in that the board didn't do the negotiations. Bruce and I were at the negotiations, which is no different than we handle union contracts. We sent a representative from the board and the town manager, which was the same way we handled the charter contract.
That's true.
Okay, so
But the
we
board
did do the
itself did not
negotiation.
negotiate the contract.
Which, we don't send the whole board to do a union contract either, but we negotiate the union contracts. So I just want to make that clear. On the issue.
The board does not negotiate the union contracts. The manager, along with, under this new regime, one member of the board does that, and then we bring that back to the board for approval. That's different. The board does not negotiate the union contracts, and the board did not negotiate. What you say is true. You and Bruce negotiated it and then brought it back, the results of your negotiation, to the board. I understand that, but the board did not do that.
Based on what the board instructed us to do.
Right.
The next point I was gonna raise was, as far as the, saying how the $105,000 was spent. My understanding was, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bruce, that $105 is money that Charter does specifically give us that's outside of the 4%. So
Yes.
that's not coming from the taxpayers.
Oh, yes, it
and
is.
wait a minute, in the
Subscribers.
sense, it doesn't come from the subscribers in the sense of the 4%. It comes from the subscribers in the sense of all the other money that they give to Charter. Just like, in theory, the brand new fiber, every single person who subscribes to Charter is paying for the fiber. When they lay new fiber in Foxborough or wherever the town may be, we're paying for that because it's part of all the revenue that Charter brings in. So the 105 comes out of that, just like all the new fiber isn't part of the 4%. It's part of that bigger number that you pay for all the other services that you pay to Charter.
Excuse me, Cari, the 105 is not part of the 4%.
No, it is not, correct.
We get the 4%.
We get the 4%,
Okay.
right. That's what our
But
subscribers
here-
pay.
Yes. Also, here's what it says. The licensee shall provide a one-time cash payment to or for the town's special PEG access account or access designate
Yes.
in the amount of $105,000 to be used to purchase, lease, and/or improve PEG access equipment and facilities.
Yes.
Payable within 120 days of the effective date of the renewal license. This grant shall be considered as an external cost for the purposes of rate regulation and may be passed on to subscribers and identified as a separate line item on the subscriber's monthly statement. So our monthly statement will show the 4%.
It may.
it will
Keyword,
also-
may.
Well, yes, it may.
It may, but
Maybe-
Charter does not do that right now, and there was no indication that they were going to do that. They may do it, but that was just,
Why would they put it in the contract? There's going to be an external cost.
It was in the last contract, wasn't it?
yes, it was, and they never
It
did
was?
it as a
It was
pass-through.
in the last contract, a similar amount.
Yes.
And they didn't pass that through to us.
How do you know that?
Well, they
wasn't
build
a
it into
separate-
their cost structure.
Right.
But
It's
they
not a
can
separate
pass it
line
on
item.
to us here.
They can, but instead they've chosen simply to make it part of their costs when they go
So why it
to
is,
have their
why,
rates
then fine.
rate
If
regulators.
you're negotiating it and they say, we're not gonna pass it on, then I'll say, fine, I'll cross that out, you're gonna pass it on. Why wasn't that done? I was negotiating with a bank, and the loan agreement said they could call the note on 30 days' notice. And I said, I don't like that. Oh, we'll never do that. I said, okay, take it out. Oh, we can't take it out. Then I don't want it. Oh, but we'll never do it. Then take it out. I mean, it's very simple.
Peter, I guess my question
They have the right
is,
to pass it on.
why didn't you raise that before?
Well, there were a number of
right now at the
issues.
table than right here?
I didn't realize it until I went through it in detail. Remember, I didn't get this until everything was negotiated.
No, 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 no. You're not gonna be allowed to play that card, no. You I'm sorry. I'm not gonna accept that. That has been in that contract since you got that draft. And when this draft start coming back on March 11th, this is March 28th. That was not anything new added to that at the last hour.
Well,
That's always been in there.
I didn't read it then. But anyway, the other thing is, when we're gonna revisit in 3 years, we can reduce the 4% to something else. But there's no requirement that Charter reflects that in their fee schedule. They don't have to give us whatever, if we say, well, we want 3% now for the next 2 years or 3 years. Okay, they'll give us 3%. Nothing prohibits them from raising their other rates to recover that money so that the subscriber will see the same amount on their total bill.
I think the rate regulators do that. Their rates are regulated.
Yeah, I know their rates
They
are
have to
regulated,
reflect
but
costs.
they can justify any cost they want. You know how that system works.
Peter,
Well,
there,
I don't think they can justify any cost.
Wouldn't be a big cost. It'd only be a 1%. If we go from 4% to 3%, they can justify 1%. Come on.
remember, they are a for-profit company.
Yeah.
Our goal here was not to regulate them down to the point that they were a nonprofit
Oh,
company.
no, that's not the point I'm making.
Okay, then I guess I'm
Well,
lost
okay.
on, because
If
at
we
any time,
decide to
everything is a
reduce-
pass-through to us.
If we decide, instead of wanting 4%, we're gonna have 3%,
Mm-hmm.
then the contract should say, to the extent the town reduces the PEG access fee, the charter will agree that they will not raise their non-PEG fees in order so that the bill received by the subscriber will be the same.
They would never have agreed to that. There's no guarantee what they're gonna charge on anything.
No.
I understand what you're saying.
They
The
have-
overall bill, the point is if we ask for it to be dropped down to, we went for a minimum of 2.5%.
Right.
Okay? On that particular line item,
Mhm.
they will drop it down to 2.5%. The
They will
intent
give
was
us-
not for them
they will give
to
us
turn
the
around.
2.5%.
Yes, they will.
Okay, but nothing prevents them from maintaining the subscriber's bill as it was before.
Yes, no, that is the intent. They are going to
The
only,
intent
they're not gonna
is-
keep charging the prescriber 4.5 and keep
No,
2 and give us 2.
No, they're not gonna charge the subscriber. It won't be a separate cost anymore.
Well,
Show
what you're
on the
saying is
back
they're
of the
gonna
bill.
raise their their expanded
Yes.
game. Well, of course they are. They're a for-profit company. They're gonna do that no matter what.
Oh,
Okay,
that's
so
why you negotiate a contract
we
that
have
doesn't
a
allow them to
motion.
do that.
we have a motion and we do have a second on the table.
The town has been snookered for the third 10-year term of 5-year.
Wait a minute.
Wish-
Another 5 years of this
I
contract.
wish that you were a part of the process, Peter.
I did not want to be a part of the process,
Oh, that's-
apart from the board
All I'm
living
saying-
up to its obligation and negotiating the contract so that the board will learn something. The board
I
didn't
wish you
learn
had been a
anything by
process
this
of that.
process.
I wish you had been a process of that. That's all I'm going to say. So, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No,
Kind of knew that one. Right. Okay, under new business, letter B, discuss action town manager process. At our last meeting, we had discussions in regard to our existing town manager, and there was a motion made by Cari and seconded by Peter to go into contract negotiation.
Seconded by Jay.
Jay.
Oh, Jay seconded?
Yeah,
I
Jay
apologize.
seconded.
Thank you for correcting me. To enter into contract negotiations with the existing town manager, and as we know, that failed. What we haven't gone forward and done yet is a motion, that I'll entertain a motion to not renew the existing contract with our current town manager.
if my memory serves me correctly, at our last meeting when we talked about this, you were still gonna talk to Mike, and Jay was still talking to some people.
No, I was writing up my summary for Mike.
You were what?
Writing up a summary for Mike.
Okay, okay. Have you finished that?
That's right.
Okay. Good. Is it something that you'll be sharing
I'll
with the board?
distribute it with the board tomorrow.
Okay.
So does that prevent the board from hearing the motion?
Nothing prevents the board from doing anything they
Okay.
want.
All right, I just, sort of, this is what I'm seeing as a cleanup from our last meeting.
And the motion is?
And the motion, what did I say?
The motion is to not renew the existing contract with our current town manager.
Okay. Did somebody make the motion?
I said I would entertain it, so if needed.
To renew the existing contract with our town manager. Is that what the motion?
With our current town manager. To not renew the existing contract with our current town manager.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Was there a
Second.
second?
Oh, there's no second.
Sorry, no second, sorry. Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion.
Knew that was coming, yes.
Are we going to follow the charter?
In what regard?
Well, in the charter, it specifically says that a selectman who have not been on the board for a year cannot be involved in the termination of a town manager.
We're not
It's
terminating.
an term.
Not
We're not
terminating,
terminating him.
just
Wait a minute,
contract
wait a
not
minute.
renewed.
Legal definition of termination is to no longer employ. Isn't not renewing a contract no longer employing?
No, it's this contract.
No, it's this
No,
contract.
this contract on its face terminates. So.
So by taking a vote, we
We're not
are
terminating his
terminating.
We're not terminating his
No, we're not.
Because
contract.
he will no longer be employed.
But
that-
he
that-
gets to
that
finish his
definition-
contract.
That definition assumes that a contract is an open-ended contract. This is not a, this is a contract
This has a deadline.
with a term.
Termination.
The term was 1 year, it terminates on its own.
We discussed this last week, the contract is no good for any town manager.
If
based
you
on
look,
some of the
if you
issues
look
with-
at the, well, then I guess it's when you're looking at the intent of that section that was written, the idea is that you could not come onto the board.
You couldn't fire, you couldn't
Right.
fire him.
You couldn't, right, well, if he's not going to be employed,
He's
and you
not-
haven't
we're
been
not
on the board
firing
for a
him.
year.
We're not firing him.
If he were being fired,
He's not going
he'd
to
being-
be, if you're terminating someone,
We're not
the legal
terminating.
definition is termination
renewing his
is
contract.
no longer employed. That's the
So
word.
what did I say again?
Okay, motion by Mr. Cahill to not renew the existing contract with our current town manager.
So we're not,
Seconded by Mr. Desilets.
Mr. Desilets and Mr.
wait,
Cahill
where
should
do you
not.
hear that that's terminating, though?
We're
That's
not
because
terminating.
We're
You're
not,
you're,
we're not renewing his contract.
which,
It's
you're
not
letting
term-
him go.
No, we're not. We're not
He will
terminating
no
him.
longer be working for the town at the end of his
We
contract.
got every right to vote on this. It's
Why?
not
You
a
haven't been on the board
termination.
a
We're not
year.
firing him. If you read the charter, it says you fire him.
No, it does not. The word fire is nowhere in that contract.
Terminating. We're not terminating.
Yes, you are.
No,
If
we're
he's
not.
not
We're
gonna
letting him
have a
finish out his
job,
contract.
if he's
For
not,
the purposes of this issue, termination would mean a discharge prior to the
Right.
expiration of the contract.
Of the contract. And
that's not what the charter says. It's not. It's not what the charter says.
What are you saying the charter is saying specifically, Cari?
It said, there's a whole section that follows on when you're going to no longer have the employment. Then there's a section where you then have to lay out the specific reasons for that. We're not following the specific steps of the charter.
So what are you suggesting that by, let's hypothetically, right, through the scenarios. So we don't do anything, at the, according to his contract, as it jives with the charter, what it would be the appropriate time to address the new contract for the existing town manager? Or
You gotta
legal,
wait till June
you know,
31st?
is
No,
there any,
no.
what is the proper course,
mean,
I guess, in your opinion of?
It comes down to a situation where, I agree, this is the time to do it. However, okay,
He's not being
we
terminated.
have set into motion a we put forward into a situation where we, and I was on the board and I was part of that contract. We drafted a contract that now looking at the contract may have been in violation of our own charter and the way that we drafted it, what even our expectations are. So now here we have a situation where we all agreed that there was issues with the contract. Now, I'm raising, there may be issues in the way that we're even talking about doing this in relation to the charter. So are we going to continue to just do what we want?
So,
That's what I'm
Karen,
saying. What's
what
the
do we
suggestion?
do?
What's the
Let it run
suggestion?
out?
Yeah.
And not rehire somebody?
No, I think that there's steps that, at this point, we have, I think that we need to step back and follow the charter. There are
I don't see
specific
it-
ways
I
to
don't
follow
see
that
it.
charter.
This is, you're trying to put it under removal and suspension.
Yeah.
Mike's not being removed
He's
from his
not being
position.
removed and he's not being
He's not being
suspended.
suspended. That's
No, there's a
specifically
section
where
that
you're
before-
citing that
before-
says, board members shall not be eligible to vote under this provision until in office for a minimum of 1 year. That's under section 5, removal and suspension. That's not the case. That's not what's happening here.
Peter, you were saying, you were making a point I wanted to.
Well, the point is that the contract on its term, by its own terms, terminates June 30th.
Right.
Correct.
So that's not a termination, that's just a if you want to not renew the contract, you're under no obligation to renew the contract.
But the way that the contract is also written, that unless you provide a certain evaluation, it says you specifically cannot renew this contract.
But it's also
Which
not
we-
auto-renewing.
It also does not auto-renew, I understand
Which
that.
then would
Yeah.
set off a different set of.
The question is, I guess, it's for the three of you to answer. What's your plan? You got us into this situation.
That's the next step of the
What's
process.
your plan?
That's the next step of the process and what I had passed out when I arrived this evening, and I apologize for not doing
What you
it
passed
sooner.
out, I said something from Kevin Coro.
I passed out 2 pieces of paper. The first of which was what I had put together as, for us to start as a working document, as a town manager hiring process of what we need to do and to set deadlines for each of those pieces, as well as add in where we think there are other steps that I may have overlooked. And then an example of what the job description was that Kevin had used when he was chair. So that was just
But what's
as a
your
speaking
plan?
point.
Your plan is to replace Mike. Fine, good.
Yes.
Okay. Now, you're the chairman.
Yes.
You have to have a plan. What are we going to
Peter,
do?
get out the piece of paper that starts that says, write job description, qualifications, start date, salary, 6-month trial period, employee referral, who to email, fax, mail, resume to, and what the
No,
deadline is for that.
That's not a plan.
How is that not a plan?
When are you going to do this?
The purpose of tonight's discussion is to set a deadline for this, for us to work as a group. This is a collaboration. I do not, as you have reminded me, have the ability to make the sole decision. I do not want to make the sole decision on what the job description should be. I would like it to be a collaborative effort, which is why I handed out the example
Well,
to you
that's
earlier.
That's
So,
interesting. and
with that
enlightening.
in mind, that's the first
We
part
didn't
of the hiring
collaborate
process I
on
have
Looking
here.
at the budget. We didn't collaborate
We're not
as a
talking about the
board
budget.
on
We're
renewing
talking
the
about
cable
the- we're
contract.
talking
Now we're
about
entering
this
new
process.
waters.
We're talking about this process. You've asked me if I've put something together. Yes, this is what I've started to put together.
Okay.
This is what I see as our process. There are probably steps that need to be fleshed out more.
It is your expectation that we're going to have a replacement by June 30th? June 30th.
It's my hope that we would have a replacement by June 30th.
And if we don't?
Then, that's when we have to come up with, in another 2 weeks, what the process is gonna be from then. And
I would have
following,
hoped you would have thought all these things through before
Peter,
you
of
embarked on
course,
this. So what's your plan? Who are we gonna get for an interim manager? Have you thought about that?
acting town manager, is that not what the process is? Is that not what the charter says? Acting town manager. Any vacancy in the office of town manager be filled as soon as possible by the Board of Selectmen in the manner provided in Article 4, Section 1. But pending such regular appointment of the Board of Selectmen shall appoint a qualified town administrative officer or employee to perform the duties of the officer on an acting basis. Such temporary appointment may not exceed 3 months, but one renewal may be voted by the Board of Selectmen not to exceed a second 3 months.
Do you have someone in mind?
Compensation for such person shall be set by the Board of
Do
Selectmen.
you have someone in mind?
I'd like to hear what the board has to say as well. It's
That's
not
I'm
my
asking you.
decision.
You have someone in mind.
Yes, I have someone in mind.
Good. I'm happy
Yes,
to
I have
hear
someone
that.
in mind.
Okay, good.
Do you have someone in mind?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Shall we
And
talk about
I think
it?
about all these things in advance.
I do as well, Peter. Shall we share our information of who we think it's going to be?
No.
We have a motion on the floor that we either have to clean up or
Thank you.
not,
let's
and
just-
then get back to
Yeah.
this discussion.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
All right, motion by Mr. Cahill to not renew the existing contract with our current town manager, seconded by Mr. Desilets.
I'd like to make a statement, if I could.
Yeah.
The reason I didn't say anything last meeting, because Mike's been a friend since he's been here, and I got caught up in a friendship. And I wasn't gonna say anything against him, I didn't say it 2 weeks ago, and I'm not saying it now. But when the next town manager comes to town, I'm gonna try not to be friendly. Not, overly friendly. I'm just gonna, it's gonna be strictly business. But, Mike's a great guy. He's a family man. I respect him. And, I'm sorry the way it worked out. And I will be abstaining from this vote. Just to, it's just the way I feel. I was just too friendly with him, and I think that's my fault. But Mike is a great guy, and I hope he gets another opportunity for another town manager's job, and I think he'll do a better job there. Okay?
So, where are we? You have a motion. Do you have a second?
We have a
Second.
second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
No.
Abstain.
Okay,
Does not carry.
doesn't carry. With that in mind, we still need to go, I believe, through the process of setting in motion what will be our actions of hiring a new town manager, or of posting for a town manager position.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have, you do not have his contract is still valid. He has never, we've gone through the process of trying to remove him, and I, as a board member, have not heard from everyone as to why they would not want to renew his contract at this point. I'm not even sure if Mike understands that point. His contract has a performance base tied to it. We know there's problems with the contract. We have not tried to correct the contract to put it back into something. I mean,
Which is
it
part of-
absolutely amazes me that in October, we had a chance to reorganize this board, and statements that were made by fellow selectmen were, we weren't gonna remove the chair at this point, even though we admitted that there were issues, because it was, it was to give you a fair shot, tell you where we felt there were shortcomings and allow you to improve. Why aren't we doing that for our own town manager? Why hasn't he had an opportunity to sit down with this board and hear what his shortcomings are and set a chance for him to try to correct those? And we know we can't do it within the current contract, so it baffles me why we didn't at least look at a 6-month extension contract to give him the chance to try to correct something. Instead, we're just throwing him out the door. Why? Are we talking about it on both sides of our mouth here? It's okay for one but not the other?
I guess the issue I have with that is that last week I came in and I asked for time, and you didn't want to grant the time to do that. You wanted to
No,
move
I
to
asked for
two-year
that.
extension.
No, I did not. I asked for 6 months.
It wasn't 6 months, was it?
Newspaper article got it.
Yeah.
6 months.
It was 6 months.
Ended up
Yes.
being, initially she discussed the 2 years, but then it went down
And I
to a
said,
year.
you won't even do 6
And
months?
I wanted to do, at least address it in May, because as we are
You
now.
wanted more time, you were talking to people
Right.
and so on and so forth.
Exactly, that was right in my report, and I wanted to have him react and then talk
Yeah.
to people, and there was a motion to move towards 6 months. And, I wanted that window of opportunity, and the reason why I seconded is I felt that there wasn't a lot of support for that window of opportunity. I think there was discussion about 2 weeks or 4 weeks, maybe at max, and so it died on the altar there.
I don't have any trouble firing people. In my business life, firing was like saying good morning. It was not a big deal. I moved very strongly to fire Jill. Why did I want to fire her, the previous town manager? Because she deliberately overexpended town council appropriation by $50,000 and then tried to cover it up by hiding the bills. And I said, no, that was the thing, the tipping thing, but there were other things too. but I gave specific reasons why she had to be fired. But we don't have anything here. We have from Beth, well, I'm gonna talk to him and we're gonna sit down with him and so forth, but then I get, well, we're not gonna renew the contract. And Jay, in all deference, you know, I assume that you, when you became selectman, you knew the contract was gonna expire in a year, you know, and it's a board's job to do that. So, I don't know. But this has been, without question, the worst board in memory, and that's not my opinion. I get that every day from people. Not too long ago, I was elected. I don't mean this last term, but before that. I was elected. I looked at the vote and I said, gee, I just squeaked by. And I want to give the people of Uxbridge a chance to throw me out, my own recall. So even though my term wasn't up, the next year, I submitted a letter of resignation, resigning my position on election day. And at the same time, I got nomination papers to fill my unexpired term. I gave the people of Uxbridge a chance to throw me out again if they wanted. And they didn't, so here I am. But I'm telling you, something has to change here, Beth.
I agree.
Something has to change.
I
And it's
agree.
not Mike.
I don't
It's
agree
not
with
Mike.
that. I don't agree with that.
I know you don't agree with that. But you don't know. You talk about a learning curve. You know, I don't know too much about curves, but I'm telling you, I haven't seen a lot of learning, Beth. I really don't.
So Peter, would you like to put a motion on the table or our next agenda to revisit whether or not I should be chair again? Should I put that on the agenda for next?
The chairman of the board is chosen by majority vote. And any time the board wants, it can, by majority vote, choose a chairman. If we're gonna discuss that, I would rather hear from Jay, being the, you know, just elected, before sworn into office, how he arrived at the conclusion that you should be the chairman. Just for historical, I thrive on information.
Sure, I'll share.
That information.
The night of the election, Cari approached me and said she wasn't sure she wanted to be chair. And then we got to the table, Beth, or actually, at some point in time, either that night or prior, Beth had mentioned she had interest in the chair. And then we got to the table here. Peter, you had, Bruce had, I think, nominated Peter to be the chair, and you declined.
No, that's not.
Or you didn't?
No.
He was nominated.
You didn't like feeding the donkeys. That was.
And
He
there
got
was
it.
a second,
enough.
and there was
Right.
2 votes.
No,
There were
Yes.
2 votes.
Yeah,
there was a
motion
vote.
seconded and there was a vote.
There was a vote,
So there are only 2 votes, and 2 votes isn't the majority.
correct.
So,
He didn't vote for himself.
So the only one I didn't nominate was Bruce. You know, I voted for you, and the only one I didn't vote for was.
No, if you had voted for him, he would be chairman.
Yeah, because I voted, Cari voted, and he didn't vote for himself.
You voted no.
Oh, did I?
well, Beth called me the day after the election and said you were going to nominate her as chairman, and that Beth wanted me to nominate Bruce. And I said, I don't like that
I wouldn't have taken it
system.
anyway.
Sure.
I want a real discussion about
Yeah.
what it is we want to do, make sure people know what the job is,
Yep.
and are willing and able to do the job. And
Yep.
we never had that discussion.
Well, and at that time too, and the reason why I didn't nominate Cari for that either was my belief is that if you want something, you want it, and you go for it, and you know. Call it sidebar conversations or what you will. If someone comes up to you and says, I'd like to be chair, you know, that at least says something about their intent on wanting to do the job.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
to me, I'm more interested in investing in someone who wants a job than someone who takes a job.
Yeah.
You know, that's a
that's
little bit of
fine.
the history on it,
Yeah,
but
okay.
sorry for the recollection of my votes.
But anyway, here we are at another impasse, and time is flying by. Mike, I'm sure, wants to know what the situation is.
Well,
Well,
then,
I mean, to have a better, Well, I guess my question then is for Jay, in that if at our last meeting, you didn't catch that my intent with that motion was was looking at a contract to try to correct our contract. And we're looking at a 6-month situation where we are, because through that discussion,
Yeah, I didn't hear
what
the
I
6
came
months,
out
'cause
of-
we talked prior, because I called everyone on the board asking for the extension of time prior to the meeting. Or at least, not asking, stating what I was gonna ask for at the meeting. And you had mentioned, I could have sworn it was maybe 2 or even 3 year, and maybe that was what was stuck in my brain when you made that motion.
No, what I did is I had asked you if you had seen our prior meeting, and at that meeting, I had outlined
A 2-year contract.
a 2-year contract is what I had outlined at the prior meeting. But that evening, to correct where we were on that communication here at the table last time was, we know we have a problem with our contract. And through that discussion, I understand you wanting more time because you wanted to see if you can improve on his management skills. But through that conversation, you also, at one point, said, really, you know, I had asked you, how do you expect to see an improvement? And you mentioned something about a class. Well, then I asked you, is that really reasonable for him to take a class and improve even in this period of time, which would have been about 2 months?
Sure.
And you're like, well, I'm not really sure. So
I'm not
that's
even
how I
sure
read.
that was the right answer, the class is the right solution either, but.
Right, okay, so that's where I was like, okay, so we know we have, the one thing on the table we knew for sure is we have a problem with the contract.
Yeah.
It's bad. So why not correct that issue at the time and extend out so that he can get a proper evaluation period and allow him a chance to hear what our concerns are? Because really, frankly, at this point, I don't even know if Mike knows why he's not being considered to continue to have employment here in this town. What did he do that was so egregious that we don't want to work with him?
Sure.
And that's what's mind-boggling to me. We have an opportunity to work with something, you know, and maybe the answer will be in 6 months. You know, it'll become more clear, but I've always been in the situation where if you're not sure about something, you're better off not making a decision than making the wrong one. You know, and here we have a situation, we know there's a problem with the contract. We know we set goals, that some of them were not attainable.
Yep.
Now, if you even look closer at the charter and you look at what the charter outlines as part of some of the responsibilities for the town manager, our goals were not in line with that. So why not look at our goals, look where this town, where we would like to go in the next 6 months, and let's do a do-over. It just blows me away. It really does. That, you know, and I even think, Jay, we had a conversation about, you know, with respect to the situation with the chair. You know, we can't just remove her as chair until we tell her what our issues are and allow her to improve. But yet, we're not giving the town manager the same respect.
Yes and no. I think the difference is Mike's certainly had a longer period in his position than Beth has.
But has he
At that point,
been
she was in the
fairly
chair for
been
4
given a discussion by this board?
No, I completely agree that we
And
have
given
not
him a
sat and
chance-
given him all the feedback.
Right.
And you've never heard me disagree with that.
And that's where I see as the difference.
Don't you feel that we have given him feedback when we did give him his review?
No, we did not.
Why do you say that?
Because in December, when we went over the goals, there was no discussion about issues that we had. The only issue that came up was on the last goal that we have, and I think as a board, we agreed that that goal wasn't really attainable. That was the only thing, as he went through and talked about where he was with the goals. And then when we had the discussion on Valentine's Day, that was totally caught off guard. And when we were asking for specifics, we didn't even get there. And then at our last meeting, Peter asked you specifically for examples, and you said you weren't ready to discuss it.
That's true.
And in that time frame, you know, the idea was is that you were gonna sit down with Mike, and then you made the statement that you hadn't had the time to do it. And so, and again, I had had a conversation with you back in October where you had raised concerns with Mike going all the way back to July, and you had shared with me then that you hadn't sat down with him, nor had you brought those concerns to the board for us to decide as a board whether or not those were concerns of the board. That's the point. He may have had individual conversations with people, but not one person controls Mike. As a board, it's our responsibility to decide, has he done something that the board wants to correct?
So then
And
how
you
can...
have not done that.
Then how can you make the statement that you don't know whether or not Mike understands it? Because you're only one individual, and as you said, no one controls Mike. How can you make that statement? You're making a statement on his behalf.
No, I'm making a statement on my perspective of his. When as a board have we sat down as a board and said anything to him? We haven't.
I don't agree. I feel we did give him feedback, and unfortunately, I don't have my notes in front of me from when we went over the goals, but I will have them for our next meeting, because I feel we did give him feedback, because one of the things I remember that was of concern to me, and I believe, if I recollect correctly, Jay, also you as well, was communication. That we were not getting enough communication from Mike of what he was doing and what was going on and things that were happening.
And
We did at some point ask for a report. I remember there was discussion about the report and meaningful activities that might have been going on, and Peter, I think you had brought up a point where someone in the past used to just go and write this
You said, Jill,
belabored 16-page report that was form templated,
Right.
that was meaningful, and we all agreed that, hey, just hit us with the news flashes of the things
Right.
that bubbled up. So we have discussed some of this. To say we haven't discussed any of it, I think
No,
is
I
don't think
probably
that's
Right.
accurate.
opposite extreme.
Right.
okay, the word any, I'm sorry if I led it to that way, but that one thing there, that in the whole scheme of the priorities of the town manager, to me, does not rise to the level of not going forward with somebody.
you don't think
No,
it's a priority?
when did we then pull him back in and say, okay, we asked, that was in December. He did. He has made steps in that. You asked him to have meetings with the department heads. He has been having meetings with the department heads.
At the last meeting we had, though, I asked Mike when the next meeting was, and he said he didn't know. It's in our meeting minutes that we just approved tonight.
Okay,
So-
he doesn't have, what's the
So
point?
shouldn't, if
He
it's,
did not know.
if it's a
He had a
meeting with his
meeting.
department heads, wouldn't it be something that would be structured? We have our structured meetings. We meet on the second and the fourth Monday of every month. Wouldn't a department head meeting be something similar to that, as opposed to,
Now you're telling him how to do his job.
I'm asking the question.
But
I'm
Beth,
just
Not
asking the
necessarily.
question. Yes, I am asking the question.
Imposed by you.
Not by me, by the
No,
board.
we never took
No.
a vote. That was
No.
never an action specifically required by the board where we said that this is what we want. That was discussion. I think that that's where the miscommunication is coming in with the board. When we discussed something at the table, we did not outline it as an action item. We did not take a motion that this was something that we were directly instructing the town manager to do. We were offering suggestions. He's the manager. He doesn't have to take our suggestions. But just because he doesn't take your suggestion doesn't mean that he fails as a town manager.
Well, here's my question for you, Mike, then, because I don't like the fact that all of this discussion is going on without including you. That makes me uncomfortable. Did you feel that it was, that you had an obligation, because it was something that I may have suggested, to have a department head meeting?
I certainly took it into account. We're not meeting twice a month, and the department
No,
heads
no,
didn't
no, I
want to
know,
meet
no,
that
no, I
often.
know. Right, I know
But
that. I
certainly-
was using our meetings as an example.
I always take suggestions of the chair into account, yes. As for being part of this, I mean, at this stage, I'd prefer not to be part of this. I'm rather uncomfortable even being at the table right now, given you know, the tenor of what's going on.
Can
I
make a
have
suggestion?
been through
Just a minute,
three
Peter.
town managers.
Peter,
Go
Jay,
ahead.
go ahead, please.
I think we're getting caught in a lot of detail, and I think where we're at is by my understanding anyways of the contract is we really don't have to decide on Mike's contract today, tomorrow. But we don't have a succession plan in the case that it doesn't go into a renewal point. But if we're debating whether or not we've had a chance to give Mike feedback and whether he's been able to take that and work with it, why are we rushing to do a renew right now or not do an auto renew right now? Why can't we wait till May? We've been discussing this at the last 3 or 4, since February 14th, Mike's performance, so there's been leaks of, performance out to him. Why can't we use that window of time into May and just make a final decision in May and be done with it?
Well, there's a reason for that. And the reason is a person. If I'm Mike, if anybody is Mike, say, hey, tell me now. If you're going to shoot me now. Don't shoot me, next week.
Well, I think it's a question for Mike. Mike, would you prefer to have a decision to walk out this door tonight so you can sleep at night on whether or not there'll be a new contract in June, or would you prefer to have feedback and wait and go through an evaluation process in May? And I think that's kind of where we're leaving things at last meeting, when we pushed to the vote. I felt strongly that we should have set up the structure and then worked within the structure, but we kind of jumped the shark on the whole process and went out to extend the contract, and we didn't. So at this point,
it all boils down
to stop
the
spinning in
reason.
circles.
Yeah,
Right?
but there has to be some guidepost, some reason. I gave very specific reasons why I felt Mike is by far the best manager we've had. And I've been here through all the managers and at least half a dozen administrative assistants. And there's no comparison. I know sometimes he gets rough with people and so forth. I understand. No one is going to be good in everything. But in the important things for the town of Uxbridge, he is right on. He is right on. But he's not going to be successful. No one is going to be successful if we don't have a functioning Board of Selectmen. And we do not have a functioning Board of Selectmen. And this is not a personal attack. You just don't have the knowledge. You can't have the knowledge, Beth. How are you going to get the knowledge?
Peter,
From
I
the AIA?
don't take it personally. However, I'm very tired of the same record being played again and again by you. When what I expressed to you a few meetings ago, I believe, was the fact that I wish that you would take advantage of the opportunities to help spread the knowledge. And you did do it tonight, but also the way you started this conversation. Rather than looking at what I had put together, you chose instead to push me, say, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? And I'm trying to go through and tell you what I've done, what I would like the board to do as a process, what I see as a process. I would prefer it to be conversational as opposed to confrontational.
I
However-
don't mean to be confrontational, although I know I am. But I'm a doer. I see something that needs to be done, I just do the stupid thing. And, this stuff and charts and I just want to, if I can do it in 2 minutes, I want to get it done, rather than spend 10 years trying to work around the thing.
I'm not trying to belabor this process.
No, I know you're not. I know you're not. But you've embarked the board on a course of action that's going to have serious repercussions. And in my mind, I don't think that you've thought it through.
I don't agree.
Well, I
You're not-
hope you don't agree.
No. And personally, I don't know that I've been the only individual to do that. Because when Cari had proposed twice to have to extend the town manager's contract, it failed twice. So I'm not the only individual personally responsible for embarking us on this.
Well,
Is that what you
you're the
mean?
one that brought up the notion that we should not renew the contract initially. I mean, everything flows from that,
Okay.
right? I mean, that's fair.
At this point,
My concern is that, you know, I agree with what you're saying, Jay, that the one thing is that I don't understand why, I guess I'm perplexed by May, because to follow the process, right now in my mind, we don't have a process. We know that our contract is broken. So what process is it that, why are we stuck on May then? We know there's an issue with the contract. Why, you know, that's why my concern is, why are we gonna follow a document that we know that it's flawed? Why not create a new document and give it a reasonable time to assess it? And, I mean,
Oh, I don't
I don't
disagree
see
with that.
anything less than 6 months
the-
as a reasonable time.
The document is, I think, is we should embark on yesterday, right? Because we need a new document regardless of whether it's a renewal or if it's a new town manager. That's independent of
right.
who the individual is.
But he's here though, so it can't be independent of that in the sense that we're not talking about a general contract for,
But why expend
anyone.
the effort for 2 months to rewrite a contract when you're gonna be starting with write one contract that's gonna be repurposable for hopefully multiple terms of a town manager?
well, you may be able to do that, but it's not a general contract, it's Mike's contract at this point. You understand? You
No,
can
I don't.
reuse it, okay? But
He has a contract right now. Why is it? Why
because the contract he has right now, we've all admitted,
is flawed?
is a flawed contract.
Correct.
Okay, so
That
why
doesn't
would we
mean it
continue?
still isn't in
But it's still
operation.
intact, it's
But
still
we
in
can
effect.
correct that though. I mean, that's where you say when we're a broken board, when we can't even, we all agree that it's broken, but we're still continuing to try to drive it. Why not fix it? And then
We should.
move on. That's what I'm saying. Fix this contract and
A
evaluate.
contract though, but it's independent of the person who's in the contract.
No, because, well, I guess,
Don't get
because
that.
then we're gonna put him in that contract. We're gonna fix it and put him into it because we know the one we have him in is broken. Why would we keep him in that?
What he has is broken and it's set to expire. So, you know, why wouldn't you wait for the expiration and get him into that new car when the lease is up as opposed to breaking out of your lease 2 months early?
Because sometimes it's worth breaking the lease when it's just not running.
But the problem is you've got a split board on whether or not, you know, it's a good thing to break the lease early.
Except that,
That's a reality, right? Let's face it,
the members of
we're a
the
split
board who want to replace the manager have not given a plausible reason for that decision. You know, people aren't upset because you want to fire the manager. People are upset because they listen and they watch and they say, well, what are
Why?
they talking about?
What's the reason?
You know, how many, tell us what banks he's robbed and trains he's held up and so forth. What do we have? Nothing.
Sure.
And at a minimum, you know, gee whiz.
We've talked about communication. We've
That's a
talked
general
about
term.
leadership.
That's a general term. How is he, how? Give specifics. How has he not been a good leader?
Cari, he does. I've talked to a lot of people.
That's a general statement. Did you ask them all the same question?
Yes, I did. Here, you know, the
I mean-
report you're gonna get tomorrow has a list of all the questions I asked the same people over and over. And the issue I have, Cari, is as a leader of this organization with multiple department heads, we invest hundreds of thousands of dollars into. I did not get support for the town manager. I didn't get respect. I don't see people motivated to work for Mike, and they have issue with it. And as a result of that, how can we say we are doing the right financial thing, paying these people hundreds of dollars and getting only 50% effort, or whatever I'm not saying they're giving 50%, but minimal effort because they don't respect and don't have the leadership
Okay, can
that they
I
need from their manager.
just interrupt you for one section? Can I have a motion to enter executive session to discuss personnel issues relating to the town manager, because some of the statements you said, I think are
We tried to do
areas
this is what's wild. We tried to do this,
No,
put this on the
but
agenda
you
as an
were trying
executive
to- no,
session, and
but
we
you
said, no, we
tried-
gotta do this publicly.
No,
We've been trying
when
to
you're
have this
talking
conversation
about,
private.
some of the statements you just made there are different than communication. That you can't go into executive decision to talk about his job performance. You can go into executive session to talk about specifically issues that relating to his personality. And the statements you've made there, I think, cross that line.
They're not related to his personality. How is it related to his personality?
Do you mind if I look at it?
I get a copy for you. The reason why I wanna bring it out, because I
Let me
haven't
ask
had.
you, have you seen what,
You can go through it, Mike.
have you seen that?
No, no.
No, I told you I wanted to give it to him tomorrow, but everything's pressed. You gotta press. We're
Exactly.
pressing. You gotta get this out today.
Exactly.
We can't
Okay,
give him a
let
window
me,
of
let me set
evaluation.
the
Let's
issue
go.
first. There's no reason why we can't go into executive session to discuss the things that Jay is bringing up. I mean, it's not required unless Mike can say, yes, I want it done. And then we would do that. But there's no reason why we can't do that if you feel uncomfortable discussing some of these, because you're talking about individual things that individual people are saying and so forth. So that, you could do that if you want.
I agree, right.
I'm not gonna quote individuals, but I think it could be borderline on what might be executive session. I would prefer to do it in executive session, and I think it was on the table a long time ago to
It
start
was.
talking this in executive session, but
Yeah.
It was.
people didn't think that was the right course.
And they didn't wanna go into
But,
executive
no,
session.
at that time, it was gonna be a general discussion
was
as
gonna be a
to
general
his
discussion.
professional performance.
How can you have a general discussion on a performance review?
You can,
You can, we've done it before.
you can. It's not elegant. It's not elegant,
Procedural
but
at
we,
that point.
we
It's not
operate
effective,
under
probably,
certain
yeah.
idiotic laws that we
I'm
are bound to.
in agreement with the idiotic laws statement.
I have a motion on the table.
Second.
All those in favor to move into
Well,
executive session?
specify the motion and the reasons.
Motion to enter executive session.
Well, I think this might be the last item. Should we, because we have this and another executive session item, can I just make a suggestion that we,
Include it as executive
Have
session?
we done everything else?
Yes.
except for the town manager?
Town
update?
manager update, member issues.
I'm in favor of skipping those this evening.
I am too.
Yeah, sure.
Mike, is there anything
Make a motion
urgent
for
that you feel that we need to be made
Nothing
aware
urgent.
of?
Nothing urgent.
Okay, so,
Updates on
couple of
things that
union
are ongoing.
negotiations too, in the motion.
Motion to enter executive session to discuss personnel, I have to get the language correct.
Personnel issues.
Personnel issues regarding the town manager, and also discussion action firefighter union negotiation update with no further business to follow.
Second.
All those in favor?
Just outside.
Pitman,
Cahill,
aye.
aye.
Robertson, aye.
Baghdasarian, aye.
We're adjourned.